If everyone could please get seated, we will get started shortly. I would ask that if you could silence your cell phones, it would be appreciated. My name is Jennifer Nazarenko, and I'm the Director for Outreach and Communications at the Defense POW Accounting Agency. It's great to be here in San Diego. It's a little bit warmer than it is in Washington, D.C., but we do have cherry blossoms, so I guess it's a trade-off. If you would, and if you're able, if you could please stand for the color guard and the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Take your seats. Thank you. We're here this morning to provide you an update on our efforts to recover and account for your loved ones that were lost during our nation's conflicts. We have about 100 government officials here to support you. They'll provide you briefings on our efforts, answer your questions, and meet with you to discuss your specific cases. There are 445 mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends of the 244 men missing today. Of these 244 men, 264 were soldiers, 89 were sailors, 47 Marines, and 45 airmen, all fighting for our freedom. Through today, we will all get to know these men. We were last here in San Diego in January of 2018 when we met with only 225 family members. 164 of those were first-timers. Today, we have 283 first-time family members attending. So if this is your first family update, could you please raise your hand? Wow. Well, thank you very much for coming. We would like to recognize the many veterans in the audience. If you are a veteran and able, could you please stand? Thank you for your service. As some of you may have seen when you arrived today, and over here in the corner, we have some unique and very special guests with us today. We have a team of therapy dogs from Love on a Leash. They're a nationally recognized therapy dog organization, and here to tell you more about them is Sue Subko.
We figured we'd bring the real stars of our group up to entertain you for a second. Well, first of all, I wanted to introduce myself again. My name is Sue Subko. I'm here today with my 6-year-old golden retriever, Bo. And along with me, my team consists of Jonathan and Grace, Sarah and Maxie, Marcia and Layla, Anne and Merlin, and on the end we have Donnie and Teddy. And we are from an organization called Love on a Leash. We are a nationwide pet-provided therapy organization. And our main mission is to do exactly what we've been doing here, bring a little furry TLC to people who need it. Here in San Diego, our organization started in the late 80s up in Oceanside. And San Diego is kind of our main hub. The San Diego Central chapter is the largest chapter. I created it about 17 years ago. We're the largest chapter in the nation. We have over 270 people that go out almost every single day of the year just to bring people love. So we go from facilities that we visit with toddlers who have learning disabilities, all the way up to people who are entering the last phase of life in hospice, and we visit with those folks, bringing our certified cats, dogs, and rabbits. The greater majority of our visits are just dogs, because you can imagine golden retrievers and rabbits don't go great together. That's what we think. The Goldens think they go great. Yeah, so we just come out and wanted to bring some joy and love to everyone here. Most of us are affiliated somehow with military. My dad was a Navy and Air Force veteran, and we started this Love on a Leash chapter because I saw the joy that he was getting from being in the VA hospital and having a dog visit him. So we have grown up, like I said, to be the largest chapter in the nation, and we're very proud and honored to be here with you today. We're going to be here until we have teams here until 1 o'clock. So when these furry faces go home, we have a new set of furry faces coming from 11 to 1. So we hope we bring a little happiness to your day, and thank you for having us, and thank you for being here.
I would like to make a few introductions before we get started with the program. With us today is Ms. Ann Mills Griffiths from the National League of POW and MIA Families in Southeast Asia. Ann, if you could please stand, and with her is her daughter, Marilyn. We also have from the Best Defense Foundation, the Executive Director, Amanda Thompson. Amanda, if you could please stand. And you'll hear more from Amanda later on in the program. We have Mr. Richard Rosevik, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, Spirit of Liberty Foundation. Sir, if you're here, could you please stand? Okay. And from the Special Ops Association, we have Mr. Cliff Newman. Cliff, can you stand, please, sir? And finally, your host today is our Chief of Staff, Colonel Derek Rankin. Sir, can you please stand? And the co-host today, if you've seen our Sergeant Major running around, she's not in the room right now, Sergeant Major Lauren Flores, and she is our Senior Enlisted Advisor. So we will introduce her when she comes back in. So today's agenda should be up on the screen, and there's also copies at your table. I think you might have gotten them when you registered also. Inside that folder, you also have a copy of the briefings that will be given today. There's also a survey form. It's on your table. There's a copy on your table that has a QR code. If you're technologically oriented and you prefer that way, we would love to hear your thoughts. If you are not technologically oriented and you want to fill them out in pencil, there's one in your folder. So we would very much like to hear from you, your comments or how we can improve upon this program for other audiences. So up on the stage, you'll see the 2026 National POWMI Recognition Day poster. In 1979, President Jimmy Carter established the National POWMI Recognition Day. The day is observed on the third Friday of September. It was established to honor veterans who were held as POWs and those who remain missing in action. Each year, the President issues a presidential proclamation, and we design a poster to recognize the debt owed to those who sacrificed their freedom so that we may enjoy peace and liberty. This year's poster was designed by Army Sergeant Ashley Maxwell, who is a photographer at DPAA. She can't be with us today because she is at school learning to be a drill sergeant. So the gold star embodies the core of our mission and the commitment we make to the families. Bringing front and center, it symbolizes the sacrifice of the families who have lost a loved one in service to the nation. It fuels the agency's dedication to providing them with answers. The POWMI flag's placement over the gold star is representative of how each family member carries the memory and upholds the legacy of our nation's missing service members. The warrior ethos is the driving force behind DPAA's work. It's a constant reminder of our promise to the nation and guides the actions and the mindset of DPAA. There are, if you are interested in ordering any posters, you can go on our website. They have large ones and they have small ones. Also, when you came in this morning, you should have seen some very small cards on the tables. Please take as many as you would like. Some, the back is a postcard if you want to mail those to friends and families. On other ones, they have our schedule for the family updates, annual government briefings for 2026 and 2027. So please take as many as you would like. Congressman Darrell Issa from the 48th Congressional District was unable to be with us in person today, but he provided a video. So if you could, please play that video.
As a young soldier in the Army, we recited the Soldier's Creed religiously. One line always stayed with me: I will never leave a fallen comrade. Well, the stanza starts with, nothing is conducted alone in the military. Heroic acts of bravery begin with a foundation rooted in patriotic duty for our God and country. That foundation is never to be diluted. Courage is drawn from the men to the left and the right of us. Because in fact, when we raise our hands and swear allegiance to our country, we do so in a group. We do so with the colleagues that we will deploy with, the colleagues that in fact have agreed to take the same risk. It is then that we realize the weight of never leaving a fallen comrade. The mission of the POW MIA Accounting Agency is exactly that: to provide for the fullest possible accounting for our missing personnel and to give to their family and our nation the appropriate treatment of those men and women. The men and women of the POW and MIA Accounting Agency pour through archives, interviews, and after-action reports and travel to far stretches of the world to bring our servicemen home. The United States is unique in the fact that we memorialize our military heroes in life and in death. President Lincoln once remarked, "A nation that does not honor its heroes will not endure." The support and gratitude for the agency ensures we will not fail to endure. We will, in fact, thrive. The social contract of with our young men and women recruits is one that we must honor and uphold, that no matter in life or in death, the United States will never leave a fallen comrade. Those who have fallen, those who have given their last full measure to this great nation, will return to the sanctity of the soil they call home. It is, in fact, something that all of us think about. No one should be left in a cold grave alone. When you tour our national cemeteries, including Arlington, you see our colleagues. Yes, they're in the cold ground, but they're also not alone and never to be left alone. I want to thank the men and women of the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. Godspeed to you all.
The support that we get from Congress is unmatched, and we could not do our mission without them. So we do appreciate it. Although they couldn't be here, we appreciate the fact that they are able to send messages to the families. It is my pleasure next to introduce our Chief of Staff, Colonel Derek Rankin. He assumed his position in July of 2025 and is responsible for the coordination of strategic planning efforts and administrative actions to achieve the agency's goal of providing families with the fullest possible accounting of missing personnel from past conflicts. A more complete bio of Colonel Rankin can be found in your book, so at this time, sir, over to you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the San Diego Family Member Update. It's so wonderful to have you all here. It's a beautiful day in San Diego. We've enjoyed our week here, spending the time at Camp Pendleton, the San Diego Padres, and various other community members and partners with San Diego State University and Scripps with Project Recover. I will tell you, it's mostly important that you all were here. And again, a raise of hand of our first-time members that have come here. It's because new people come to share in the power of connection that we have at these family member updates, to share in the stories that we can uphold those memories that are cherished, that hopefully one day we can get that answer for all of you. So it's my honor and privilege to be here with you all today, and on behalf of our director, Mr. Kelly McCaig, it's really cool that I get to be here and share some opening remarks and get to listen to all your stories. So we talked about the warrior ethos, and I'll tell you, at DPAA, we live that warrior ethos every day, to never leave a fallen comrade. And our team of professionals spanning over 700 military and civilian individuals embody that warrior ethos every single day. And to share with you how we get after that warrior ethos, play the video.
We write no last chapters. We close no books. We put away no final memories. An end to America's involvement in Vietnam cannot come before we have achieved the fullest possible accounting of those missing in action.
Why keep searching? The answer is simple. You never leave a fallen American behind. The mission of the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, or DPAA, is to provide the fullest possible accounting for our missing personnel to their families and their nation. Strategically located in Arlington, Virginia, with major facilities at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam, Hawaii, and Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska, the more than 600-person defense agency is jointly manned by soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and Department of Defense civilians with specialized skills. Researching, recovering, identifying, and ultimately returning an individual to their family begins with analysis and investigation. The DPAA experts begin the search by studying all known information regarding the circumstances of each loss. Historians and analysts gather information from U.S. veterans, foreign witnesses, archival records, and other sources. They then create a case file for each unaccounted for American. This file may include historical records, official correspondence, maps, photographs, daily activity logs, and medical and personnel records of the missing person. These files are continually updated until an identification is made.
Once the research has been done here, and we get the command's approval, we send out small teams. It could be up to 2 people, it could be a 10-person team, conducting interviews at a villager's house, at a district office, or in a combination of going to the site first and then conducting the interviews on site.
Once all available information is analyzed, a decision can be made to disinter individuals buried as unknown or conduct field investigations. During a typical investigation mission, personnel interview potential witnesses, conduct on-site reconnaissance, and survey terrain for safety and logistical concerns. Teams also try to generate new leads that may result in future recoveries. The main goal of the investigation is to obtain enough information to correlate or connect a particular site with one or more missing Americans. If enough on-site evidence is found, the site will be recommended for recovery and excavation. Recovery sites range in size from a few square meters, such as in individual burials, to areas larger than football fields for aircraft crashes. DPAA may hire as many as 100 local workers to help with the excavation process.
This job has so many benefits. For me personally, it's an opportunity to serve the country, but also our fighting forces and kind of contribute to that as well. Professionally, it's just an incredible challenge to get to work in all the countries where we work, to travel to these amazing sites, to work with the local villagers and local officials, and just have the opportunity to give somebody some answers after decades of waiting to know what happened to their loved one, and maybe just wrestling with the grief that lack of information and lack of answers brings. We have the chance to resolve that for them, and that's just an incredible opportunity.
Investigative and recovery missions in search of missing Americans take DPAA personnel to distant, remote, and often dangerous locations all over the globe. Rice paddies in Southeast Asia, areas on the Korean Peninsula, 16,000-foot mountaintops in the Himalayas, and underwater sites off the coast of Papua New Guinea. And we still continue to search the battlefields of World War II throughout Europe. After a successful recovery, all evidence is then transported to the DPAA laboratories. Once they've arrived in the lab, the painstaking process of identification begins. This is the final step of the mission, leading to the return of an individual. In many of the cases, an important step in the identification process is DNA analysis, which is accomplished by cutting a bone sample that is sent to the Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory. One of the challenges DPAA faces today is the lack of reference samples from family members of those still unaccounted for. Any person who is a relative of an unaccounted for American is encouraged to contact their service casualty office to ensure there is a DNA reference sample on file for that service member. DPAA makes an identification when all available evidence remains. Artifacts and historical documents point to the same person. The ID process can take anywhere from a few months to several years to complete. Any unresolved cases are kept open with the hope that new evidence will be found or new technologies will be developed to make a future identification possible. Once an American has been identified, there remains a return to their family through their respective service casualty office. They are returned home with full military honors and given the respect they earned through their service and sacrifice for their country.
Oh, as a family member, this agency, to me, is doing phenomenal work, and in a very personal way, because when somebody loses somebody like my father, and you really don't know what the story is for 70 years, and then you find an agency that knows about him and keeps his memory alive, keeps the mission alive to try to find him. It's very meaningful in a very personal way, because it means you're not just doing this yourself alone. You have a whole body of people who are concerned about finding your dad and bringing him home.
That says something about how we honor our dead, particularly those who have served this nation. I'm very grateful to all of the DPAA and the related agencies and the military in general, as they've pursued this in our government, and for our citizens, because they think it's an important enough mission to continue. And the way we value life, and very few nations, I don't think any other nation to this degree does this.
Which, makes me proud to be an American.
I just wanted to yell openly to everybody out there, he's home, he's home. I couldn't believe it. And when I went up and touched his name, I thought, you're home, you're home. It's unbelievable. I'm glad I live in the United States of America, and that we have this attitude. Leave no man behind. We're so fortunate. I want you to know, and I know from my own experience, that if something's happened to you, we will be looking for you.
The men and women of the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency are united in their effort to recover and return as many of our missing personnel as possible. One more patriot return, one more family that now has answers. One more step in fulfilling our nation's promise.
Towards the end of that video, there's a message that we always want to relay. And it's that for those servicemen and women who are serving today, that should something happen to them once hostilities cease, there's an agency that knows your story and will bring you home. So some background about DPAA. In 2015, then Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel was directed by Congress to consolidate the entire past conflict accounting effort into a single agency. Congress codified our mission in the 10 United States Code, sections 1501 to 1513. And in this code, it talks about not only establishing a single agency led by a civilian, but also ensuring that agency achieve the fullest possible accounting, as well as establishing individual case files for all of the missing. Additionally, we established a public-private partnership effort to expand the capabilities to conduct the accounting mission, because you can never build a team large enough to accomplish the sacred accounting mission. Our partners help provide vital research, resources, and technology to help this mission evolve and hopefully find the answers we are all looking for. And then lastly, Congress gave us a mandate for DPAA to build the capability and the capacity to account for at least 200 individuals a year. In the infancy of DPAA, this was a huge undertaking. However, I will tell you, because of this amazing team, in 2017, 2 years after we were established, DPAA exceeded that mark. Over the last 11 years, we have identified over 2,000 individuals. This effort has been accomplished because of the unwavering resolve of our team, our partners, and you, the families. However, we don't stop there. Of the just under 81,000 unaccounted for, unfortunately only about 38,000 we believe are recoverable. And that's largely because many of our unaccounted for are due to deep sea losses or high-speed aircraft crashes where the remains were either fully consumed or they were damaged beyond our ability to get the DNA. However, you're going to hear about some of the new technological efforts that our teams have developed. We have not yet quite got to the point where we can get DNA out of heavily charred remains, but we believe someday there's going to be the ability to accomplish that. And so, we're protecting and holding on to those remains as we recover them. While we hold on to the hope that new technology will continue to develop. DPAA's Sacred Mission Set is widely seen and recognized as humanitarian. It spans 54 countries around the globe, and because of DPAA's humanitarian mission, we have a unique capability to access nations where other government organizations are unable to enter, because of the special relationships we've established through our mission to open the door with those host nations. So I've already talked about the interest of Congress, but we know that the interest of the families is monumental. That's as evidenced by your presence with us today, especially as we saw the number of first-time attendees. So our goal is to spread the word about the Sacred Accounting Mission so that you, the families, can continue to attend these events, to connect and gain new and vital information and share your stories, that power of connection. So you're going to hear this plug a few times today. Our good friend Kevin Costner already mentioned it. If you have not donated a family reference sample or DNA, which is a simple cheek swab, please do so and visit the Armed Forces Medical Examiner System table that's outside here today. When we have remains that come into the lab, we cannot make an identification until we have that DNA to compare it with. This is a critical, important step. So please, if you have not provided a family reference sample, take the time to do so. I want to thank our veteran service organizations for their interest and support of this Sacred Accounting Mission. Their advocacy is immense, and their voices are loud. It's another indicator of the passion we have as Americans for our service members and the warrior ethos. As I mentioned before, we cannot conduct this sacred mission alone without our partners, support from Congress, veterans groups, and most importantly, you, our families. On this slide, you'll see our plan for fiscal year 2026. The fiscal year kicked off on 1 October 2025 and will run through 30 September of 2026. This year, our plan has us operating in 28 countries and territories around the world. On the top of the slide, you'll see 25 investigation teams and 41 recovery teams. How those teams are formed starts with research. Our research involves us studying domestic and foreign archives to gain information. We look at a myriad of information, encompassing unit records as well as individual deceased personnel files or any source of information that was recorded about the individual we're trying to locate. Once that research is conducted with enough information, we'll then send an investigation team to collect information and interview witnesses with the intent to identify the specific location of the case that they are investigating. Following a successful investigation, we'll then send out the recovery teams. Something unique about our recovery teams is that they're significantly larger than the investigation teams because of the intense work, different skill sets, and resources that are required to fill those teams to excavate the remains. Later today, you'll have the opportunity to hear about a day in the life of a recovery team. So a few updates of note. This past fiscal year, DPAA achieved a historic milestone, 231 identifications due to the tireless effort of the entire DPAA team. A round of applause. Currently, 16 DPAA teams consisting of 170 personnel are deployed to Hungary, Laos, Papua New Guinea, Japan, Vietnam, the Philippines, and the Solomon Islands, where they are continuously working around the clock to identify our missing personnel from past conflicts. Over the last 40 years, DPAA has had great cooperation with our Vietnamese, Laotian, and Cambodian personnel. Highlighting our Vietnamese partners, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, when we had to unfortunately pull teams from the field, our Vietnamese counterparts continued our recovery missions, and they were able to recover the remains that we were searching for. And subsequently, we were able to make identifications from those remains, due in part to their efforts and also because of our relationship. South Korea is another important partner of ours. In fact, they've established an agency that's quite similar to DPAA called the Ministry of National Defense for KIA Recovery and Identification, MACRI. To those of you who are part of the Korean War families, this organization is not only working on behalf of the United States government, but they also pay respect and homage to the families. They understand the sacrifice. In 2018, following a successful Singapore summit, DPAA received 55 boxes from North Korea. The picture in the center of this slide depicts Dr. Bird and team with the Korea People's Army in North Korea collecting the 55 boxes. Once assessed back into the lab, we discovered that there were not 55 individuals, but there were actually 250 individuals represented in those boxes. The team got to work quickly, and they have not stopped. Since we've recovered those remains from North Korea, we have now identified over 100 missing service members out of that population. Additionally, our team was able to discern between American and South Korean remains, and we've been able to repatriate 90 such remains back to South Korea. Because of this monumental effort, those family members who have been told for decades that your loved one is still missing in North Korea, they got the call. So please, stay hopeful, stay in contact, provide a family reference sample. Those key factors help us in identifying our missing, your loved ones, our nation's heroes. In 2024, cooperation with China renewed, paving the way for multiple recovery missions. From one of those recovery missions that took place in the fall of 2024, DPAA was able to recover a set of remains. DPAA will continue to do everything within our ability to gain access to places where our missing can be found. Through partnerships, advocacy, you, our families, and the stories you share, the connection that binds us all together in pursuit of the sacred mission will continue to unlock doors and hopefully provide answers. And speaking of answers, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce to you Technical Sergeant Jim Verhines. Just a month ago, on February 24th, DPAA identified the remains of United States Army Air Force's Technical Sergeant Jim Verhines, missing from World War II. Verhines entered the Army and served with the 458th Bombardment Squadron, 330th Bombardment Group. On April 13th, 1945, he was the engineer on a B-29 Superfortress aircraft that took part in combat missions against targets in Tokyo, Japan. During the mission, the aircraft was shot down. However, Technical Sergeant Verhines survived the crash, but was later captured and then imprisoned at the Tokyo military prison. He died on the night of May 25th, 1945, when an air raid ignited a fire that burned much of Tokyo, including the military prison. Following the war, the American Graves Registration Service recovered 65 sets of remains from the prison, but they were unable to identify any as Verhines. 39 unknowns associated with the Tokyo military prison were interred at Fort McKinley Cemetery, now the Manila American Cemetery and Memorial in Manila, the Philippines. In 2022, DPAA exhumed those 39 unknowns for laboratory analysis. Following, our scientists were able to apply modern forensic techniques to finally identify Jim and for his family to receive that call. Because of the efforts of historians, scientists, the entire DPAA team, our partners, our advocates, and you, our families, we together are able to do our absolute best to embody the warrior ethos and fulfill the fullest possible accounting so that more families will receive that call. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for spending your time with us. I look forward to connecting with all of you, as many of you as possible. Your stories are so important. Your memories, they're cherished. And as I would say earlier, they connect us and they ensure that our heroes are not forgotten. You reinvigorate our continuous embodiment of the warrior ethos. And again, it's my honor to be here with you all. It's my honor to serve. And hopefully you all will get that call one day. Thank you all and have an amazing day. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Rankin. Before we go to our next speaker, there are two very, very special guests that I'd like to introduce to you. Both are former POWs from the Vietnam War. Mr. Louis Mayer was held prisoner for 5 years in the infamous Hanoi Hilton. Sir, if you're able, could you stand and be recognized? And one of the few civilians to be held captive, also with us today is retired Mr. Mayer was one of the few civilians to be held captive. Also with us is retired Army Major Mark Smith, who was held prisoner for 10 months in Cambodia, which if you follow the Vietnam War, you know that those who were held captive in Cambodia experienced some of the worst and most harsh treatment that you can imagine. So, sir, welcome home. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Miss Amanda Thompson. She's with the Best Defense Foundation, and they work with veterans and Gold Star families. And Amanda's going to give you a little bit of background on their organization. Amanda.
Good morning. I will say I have to apologize. My boss, our founder, Donnie Edwards, was supposed to be the one speaking to you, so I may look a little different, but we're going to share the same information. I want to start out by saying thank you, not just for having me, but for the work everyone in this room does every single day. The Best Defense Foundation exists because of people like you, people who believe that no one gets left behind, not in the field, and not when they come home. So let me tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. The Best Defense Foundation is a nonprofit founded by Donnie and Catherine Edwards. The simple version is we take veterans back to their battlefields where they served. But that doesn't really capture it. What we actually do is give people the chance to close a chapter that never got closed, to stand on a ground that changed their lives and finally say, I'm still here and I remember. We run programs in Normandy, Holland, Belgium, the Pacific, and this year, for the first time, Vietnam. Every program is different, every veteran is different, but the thread running through all of it is the same: legacy. Honoring it, preserving it, and making sure it doesn't disappear when the last of these men and women are gone. And that brings me to something that I want you to really hear, because I think it goes to the heart of why we are all in the room together. Preserving legacy isn't only about the veterans who are still with us, it's about the ones who never made it home. That's who these veterans carry with them every single day, and certainly every time they walk back on that ground. The men they lost, the friends they didn't get a chance to grow old with. Our veterans travel with us because of them, to honor their service, to give them a voice, to say their names in the places where it matters most. That's not something you can put a price on, but it's something that you can be a part of. One of the ways that we make sure that these voices carry forward is through our Next Gen program. Our Next Gen program embeds students on our battlefield returns. Young people between 18 and 24 walk directly alongside veterans on every program. They're not there as observers, they're there as witnesses. They walk the same ground, they hear the stories firsthand, and they take on something we consider essential to this work, our Battlefield Cemetery project. On every program, next-gen students show up to care for the graves of the fallen. They restore what time and weather have worn down. They stand at the markers with the veterans who knew the men buried beneath them, and they leave those places better than what they found them. It sounds simple, but if you've ever watched a student kneel beside a grave next to a veteran who lost his best friend on that same ground 80 years ago, you understand why it matters. These students go home changed. Some become historians, educators, advocates. All of them become storytellers. That's the whole point. Because eventually, the veterans won't be here to tell those stories. Next Gen makes sure that someone will. But BDF's commitment to veterans doesn't begin and end on the battlefield. It follows them home too. That's what our Stronghold Transition Program is about. Transitioning out of the military is one of the hardest things a service member will ever do, and we don't talk about that enough. You spend years, sometimes decades, with a clear mission, a tight community, a defined sense of purpose, and then one day that's gone. And the uniform comes off and the world expects you to just figure it out. A lot of them struggle. A lot of them feel completely alone in this struggle, even surrounded by the people who love them. Stronghold exists to bridge that gap. We work with veterans, specifically special operations, in navigating the transition from military to civilian life, connecting them with resources, with the community, and with each other. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can offer someone isn't a program or a service, it's another veteran who has been exactly where they are and found a way through. The mental health dimension of this work matters enormously to us. We know the statistics. We know what it costs when we fail veterans in that transition. Stronghold is our answer to that. The through line between Stronghold and our battlefield returns is the same thing it always is. We take care of the ones who took care of us. Whether that means standing with a 90-year-old veteran at the grave of his best friend in Normandy, or sitting with a 28-year-old who just got out and doesn't know who he is anymore, we show up. I want to tell you about one veteran who traveled with us to Normandy, Richard Rossi. It was his first time back since the war. He was 98, and he carried something with him for decades, the memory of his best friend, who didn't make it off that beach. When we brought him to the Normandy American Cemetery, he found the grave, spent a few moments, leaned down, and said the one thing he came to say: "We won the war." That was it. That was the whole message. Everything he had survived, everything he had carried, everything his friend had given his life for, wrapped up in 4 words. And he needed to say them at that grave and on that ground, looking at that name in marble before he left this earth. That visit was his last chance, and we gave it to him. That's what we exist for. Not the logistics, not the itinerary, that moment. I'll be honest with you. When I took over as executive director, I knew Best Defense was doing important work. What I fully didn't appreciate yet was how much of that work happens in the quiet moments. Not on stage, not in front of a camera. At a roadside marker in Belgium at dusk, on a beach in Normandy before anyone else is awake, in a conversation between a 22-year-old student and a veteran who has never talked about what happened until then. These are the moments we exist for. This year is a big one for us. We have our 82nd anniversary D-Day Normandy battlefield return with 30 World War II veterans, including a 107-year-old who's returning with us. And we have our inaugural battlefield return to Vietnam, a program that has been years in the making, and one that I think is going to mean something profound to the MACV-SOG community that has waited a very long time to be honored the way they deserve. I know many of you in this room carry your own connections to that history, and I want you to know that BDF approaches Vietnam with the same reverence, the same intentionality, and the same commitment to the veterans and to the fallen that we bring with us on every program. DPAA's mission and ours are not the same, but they come from the same place. You bring heroes home. We help the ones who made it back find their way back to the ground, to the memory, to each other. I think there's more we can do together, and I hope today is the beginning of that conversation. Before I wrap up, I just want to say this. The veterans we work with are getting older. We feel the urgency of that in every single program, every single year. Every battlefield return we run might be someone's last chance to go back. That's not something we take lightly. We plan every program knowing that, and we show up knowing that. But here's what else I also know. The stories don't have to end. That's what BDF is really in the business of. Not just taking people on trips, making sure that these men and women did what was sacrificed on their behalf lives on. And the students who hear who hear the stories, and the families who finally understand what their grandfather carried, in the world that gets to keep benefiting from the freedom that was bought at an extraordinary cost. That's the work, and we are so proud to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. The next portion of our program is what we call the Remembrance Ceremony. And what that is it's an opportunity for you to introduce yourself and introduce your missing loved one. We feel like, as you've heard from Colonel Rankin and Amanda also talked about it, speaking their name and telling their story is what helps keep them in our memories and in our hearts. So we would like for you to share them with us today. In the back of your program booklet, there's a little guide if you're not sure about what to say. We would like to ask you to keep your remarks brief so that we can cover. We've got over 400 families here that we want to give everyone a chance to speak. You'll see some individuals in the audience holding microphones. If you're interested in speaking, if you could just raise your hand, they will come to you and I will call on you. If you would hold the microphone up to your face so that we can all hear. And with that, we'll get started. Who would like to go first? Yes, ma'am, over here.
So I wrote this down so I don't forget anything. First of all, my name's Dottie Pendleton. My uncle is Corporal John Edwinson, Jr., who was killed in Guadalcanal on September 24th, 1942. On Memorial Day weekend, 2017, I found the DPAA website. Within days, our journey had started. On January 20th, 2018, we attended our first DPAA family member update right here in Mission Valley, so full circle for us. On 9/11, 2024, my uncle was positively identified, 82 years after he was buried with 4 other Marines in Guadalcanal. 11 months ago, we were able to bury his remains with my grandparents in Massachusetts with full military honors. I'm here today as a graduate of the DPAA for 2 purposes. First of all, to thank the DPAA, all the scientists, anthropologists, and all the men and women who work every day to bring home our loved ones. My family is especially grateful for our casualty officer, Chuck Williams, for his unwavering support through this journey. No question was ever too trivial for him, and he kept us updated all along the way. Thanks also to the Marine Corps for helping us to have such a dignified transfer of remains and burial in Massachusetts. Secondly, I would like to give you all hope and encouragement. My mother and her siblings always prayed that one day John's remains would return home. I never thought that day would come for our family, and we hit many roadblocks along the way. Just when we had given up hope, the homeowner was gardening in an unexcavated part of his yard and found human remains. We were very fortunate to meet many nice families along the way at the 3 family member updates that we attended on the West Coast. My uncle was buried in the jungle of Guadalcanal with 4 other Marines after being ambushed. We've met one of those families at 2 of these updates. Their loved one was just recently identified. It turns out that the Marine that was buried right next to my uncle was also from Massachusetts. Unbeknownst to us, he was buried in his hometown a year to the day before my uncle. His family came to our memorial and burial. It only took us 82 years, so don't give up.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. My name is Jeff O'Kane. I'm here to represent, my great uncle Bjorn O'Kane, Seaman First Class, and the 11 other members of his plane lost on June 1st, 1945 aboard a U.S. Navy PB-4Y2, Bureau number 59563, VPB 106, Squadron, crew number 3. The names of the other men are Howard F. Mears, Vernon Carlson, Robert Decker, Roy Blanton, Harold Capon, Paul Davis, Arthur George, Ernest Kitchen, Doyle Morgan, Raymond McCabe, and Joseph Reeder. Their mission was a two-plane recon mission from the Philippines to the Singapore Naval Yard when they were shot down by a Japanese Oscar. In 2018, my family discovered the report written by the crew of Lieutenant Heiler, including the pictures of the crash locations of 59563 in the ocean in the country of Indonesia. My uncle Stephen wrote a 200-page research paper pinpointing the crash location of 59563, and we delivered to DPAA at the 2019 San Jose FMU as we eagerly wait for DPAA to get an agreement with Indonesia to recover the 1,900 MIAs from World War II. The O'Kane family got to work. In 2018 and 2019, two of the gunners aboard Lieutenant Heiler's plane were located and interviewed for their eyewitness accounts the day of the crash. Vic Walters at 95 and Ed Saruba at 93. Great men I was very honored to speak with. The O'Kane family set out to locate and notify the 11 other families of lost airmen aboard 59563, which was completed in February of 2025. I've returned to my 5th FMU to inform you that the families of the lost aboard 59563 have supplied 12 DNA FRS samples, sending a clear and direct message: we have not forgotten. I eagerly await DPA's agreement with Indonesia to bring our fallen home after 80 years of waiting. I also came to bring some O'Kane tenacity and our inability to understand the word can't until they all come home. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm here to share the story of my Uncle Zane. He died in Normandy, World War II, still hasn't been recovered. And he was one of those poor farm boys and grew up in Michigan, tough as ever, and extremely talented. He had a gift of writing. In fact, he was named Zane because my grandfather named him after Zane Grey. Well, I am lucky that they hung on to these old letters, barely. I mean, I'm kind of the family historian, so they found their way to me. And when I read through all his letters, I made a book of them, and I put some pictures together, and I went to Normandy on my 80th birthday to visit my Uncle Zane. I learned so much from the letters, but I don't want to go on and on, but he had such a gift of writing and communicating, from the way he communicated with his mother, my grandfather, my father, who is his big brother, I knew who he was, and I knew he was an amazing guy. He wrote this poem about peace, and I'm so honored to be able to share this work of my Uncle Zane. The night is dark and the rain is falling. The earth is pleased by nature's calling. The world's at peace for now at least. We have no hate for man or beast. Then out of the night came the march of feet that disturbed the quiet with their heavy beat. There's a slosh of mud as the doughboys stepped to find a foe to intercept. The flash of guns, the cries of pain have brought the war to us again. To think the paths where sheep once ran now flow bright red with blood of man. And the fields where the grains grew, once in waves, are sacred now with warriors' graves. How out of this place are tanks and guns, the threat of Japs, the hate of Huns. With a peaceful night that once I knew, that beautiful, brought me back thoughts of home and you. I'm glad for the clouds that stay in place to hide from God this great disgrace. For love should fill our hearts and hate not known, and seeds that bring life, not death, be sown. If life on earth is all turmoil, I'll find my peace beneath the soil. Zane A. Flynn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Maggie Ogden, and I'm here with Team Ogden, my daughter Carla Rideout, Sean Wright, and Bobby Jones. My brother Howard, Lance Corporal Howard Ogden, God bless his soul, was killed October 18th, 1967 in Vietnam. He is still unaccounted for, and he will never be forgotten. We will never give up. Even if I'm gone, we got Team Ogden going. So I just want to thank DPAA for all they do, all they've done. And I want to bring my brother home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martinez, can you everybody hear me? My uncle is Benito Lopez, private first class. He comes from New Mexico, a farming community. My grandparents had 12 kids. 7 of them are drafted. Benito is the eldest. He'll first go to Hawaii Islands. It's very primitive still there. Eventually he'll end up in the Philippines. Sadly, he was killed in the invasion when the Japanese. No remains were found. He will always remain in my heart. He died for his country. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, go ahead.
Still morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alfonso Mejia. I'm here with my wife, Linda Mejia. We're representing our uncle, Bobby, PFC Gutierrez, who was an ammo carrier at the Chosin Reservoir Battle, North Korea. He was killed in action December 2nd, 1950, with the 7th Infantry Division, 31st Infantry Regiment. It was my mom's little brother, and our Uncle Bobby was only 17 years old. I want to thank, first of all, DPAA for doing this for us, for all our family members, and I want everyone in this room to know that every day of my life, I am praying for every family member, his loved one, to come home. Everybody sitting in this room. And please never quit, never give up hope. And hopefully that your loved ones could be brought home, and we're not going to give up. I mean, you can't give up. We're not going to give up, and we just want to thank the DPAA for doing what they do all over the world, all the digging, all the hard work, everything that they do. God bless all those guys that didn't make it home, and we hope and pray that they come home. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Joanne Rivera. I am the proud daughter of Ronald Philip Susi. I'm honored to introduce my daughter, Jennifer. This is her first family update. My dad disappeared over water off the coast of Da Nang. He was in a search and rescue mission, and the helicopter just disappeared off the radar. So we don't have a whole lot of hope, honestly, that they will find him, but I will say that my sister and I at the last family update were amazed when they announced that they were now doing underwater excavations, so we do have a little bit of hope. I am very honored to have a hero mama. She's still with us today. She's a little feeble to be here, but she used to come to these, and she gave us the gift of being proud of our dad, and I always carry that with me. She raised 3 children. She was 26 years old, and she had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and was told that my dad was missing. And they've never, of course, found him to this day because he disappeared over the water again. But I am just amazed by the strength of my mom. And of course, all of you, we have such a common bond. We never wanted to be in this club, but here we are. And my heart goes out to all of you. It wasn't until high school that I started having dreams, because we lived in the same house from when I was born till I was 20 years old, that this man would knock on the door, and I would answer the door, and he would say, "Are you Joanne?" And I'd say, "Yes." And he would say, "I'm your dad." And, that's kind of all you have. And I only remember him from pictures. But there's certain times in all of our lives that it hits harder on those calendar dates than others. And, of course, Memorial Day and the day they disappeared, etc. But for me, I remember turning 26. I wasn't married yet, and I was just driving in my car, and it occurred to me, oh my gosh, my mom was this age, and her husband went missing, and she had 3 little babies at home. How on earth did she do it? So she's definitely my other hero. Another time was when my firstborn, I have 3 children, Johnny is my youngest, when my firstborn turned 3 and was sitting there just with a smile on my face watching him play with his dad, and then it occurred to me, oh, wow, that's the age I was when I lost my dad. And it just really hit me hard, because I realized even more the significance of my loss. So I too want to thank the DPAA. It's just an incredible thing what you do, and we just are so grateful that you have not forgotten our loved ones. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Borovitz. My daddy was Colonel Arthur Chittister, so I've taken the name Mary Chittister Borovitz in my later years. Thinking about what this woman just said, my mom received notification about her husband being killed in Korea in November 29, 1950. And there were 4 of us at home, little ones. I was the oldest at 7 years old, and my siblings below me were much younger. So my dad was posthumously promoted to colonel, He was in the Marine Headquarters Company. He was missing in action in Chosin Reservoir. Any of you who are from Korea know about the Chosin Reservoir, so I won't go into the details of that horrendous fight situation. But before I sit down, I just wanted to mention that I spent decades of my life being angry at the military. Why did they take my father from me? Why did he think going to war was more important than staying home with 4 beautiful kids? And it wasn't until I got notification from this organization to come to one of these events that I started calming down about that and being more appreciative and kind of respectful of his choice. It was very difficult for me to give up that hatred of the military and what it did to my family and what it's done around the world. But now it's a little bit easier for me to take that in now. And thank you for this.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Major Hazard Stolzatz. I currently an aviator in the United States Air Force. Happy to serve. Thank you for everybody being here. I really appreciate you. I'm here for my grandfather. He was also an aviator, Vietnam. He was shot down in a thud over Laos and consequently left behind in that country. So I appreciate the DPAA's work to go out and do that seeking and hoping to find. But I'm looking out to the crowd and all you family members, and I want you to keep up the good fight. I want you to continue to ask the tough questions. And the DPAA only gets what they get as far as a resource. So you sometimes have to do your own digging, and you have to give some of that information up. So I really appreciate all of you, and I love being here with you all and sharing this with you. But for my grandfather, David Herdlicka, pilot, thud driver in Laos, May 18th, 1965. Thanks.
Thank you. Could we get a microphone over here, please?
Good morning. I'm Ken Gerstel. I'm joined by my wife, Diane Gerstel, and I just wanted to share a little story, really following on the last conversation about continuing the fight and hope. My father, Donald Arthur Gerstel, went missing on September 8th, 1972, flying an A-7 Corsair off of the USS Midway, which is stationed here in San Diego as a museum. At his 50th anniversary of disappearance, we had a service on the Midway for him. I did not know the people that knew him. He was an aviator who replaced another aviator lost at sea in the same mission in Vietnam. And I think we were at one of these events, I don't know, hon, like 20 years ago, give or take, when my father's case was moved to inactive, no further pursuit. Fast forward to September of 2022. All of the living members of my father's squadron arrived to his full honor service on the Midway, one of whom visited from a hospital here, and that included his wingman. And his wingman started sharing stories with other comrades of my father, and he said, I think the search was wrong. And through the efforts of the DPAA, through the efforts of retired service members, and through the efforts of my wingman, my father's case was moved to active within the last 3 months. And I'm proud to be here. I would just like to express my gratitude to my father, to my deceased mother, to all the family members here, to the DPAA, and to the POW MIA community of families who continue to ask the tough questions, as our last speaker expressed, and to all of the fallens
Thank you. Go ahead, Andy.
My name is Phillips Huffman. My father named me after my uncle, who was lost flying the hump in World War II, which is from India to China over the Himalayas. So many planes were lost, you may have heard the term the aluminum trail, where you could fly over this area and see the reflection of all the remnants of the downed airplanes. So my uncle was a pilot on a B-24 flying supplies to China. I've heard throughout my whole life about his loss, and the day my father died, it was still a big hole in my father's heart as he looked up to his older brother. I am sorry that my father and other family members have passed away and did not know that anything about the DPAA and the search for his remains and his aircraft. Certainly my heart goes out to the other 9 crew members and all the other people that have been lost and that we've talked about today. I just want to say thank you very much for not giving up. I think my family pretty much did give up. I know my father kind of did, and yet the pain never left him. So I will be sharing as much as I can about today's information with the rest of my family members. Thank goodness for email, and pass the word that the DPAA has not given up hope. And I was amazed at the packet they sent out that shows about everything they've done in recent years that we didn't even know about, and they're still looking and still searching and spending time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Over here on this side.
Hello, I'm the granddaughter of Major Max Weil, who was aboard the Orochimaru that was bombed and sunk on December 14th of 1944. This is my first time here. I feel really honored and privileged to be amongst all of you. I did not know my grandfather, obviously, but I've learned so much about him from the DPAA, and I'm so incredibly grateful. I'd like to believe that he's here with me. I got a phone call 5 years ago out of the blue from a geneticist, and saying that they were seeking DNA for remains, and it is believed that he did not survive the initial bombing, but I've come to learn so much about his time in the service and his 6 years as a POW and the 64-mile march and the conditions in the hell ships. And as heartbreaking as it is, I feel incredibly proud, and I would like to believe that myself and my sisters possess his bravery and his courage. And I'm hoping the First Lady that spoke, I'm so happy that you never lost hope and were connected with your deceased family member via DNA. I mean, I have no expectation, but that is my hope also, that perhaps he may show up and we can have service for him, to honor him. But until then, I'm here to honor him, and I want to thank each of you for helping me do that.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Can you give her the microphone, please? Behind you.
My name's Dawn. I'm here with my mom, Carolyn. We're representing Captain Ronald Dean Stafford. He was a F-111 pilot in Vietnam. In January 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed to end the Vietnam War. But that month, my dad was listed killed in action, along with his navigator, Captain Charles Caffarelli. My dad also didn't celebrate his 30th birthday that month. They both were on their second tours. They came back voluntarily. My dad had been shot down in 1969, but recovered, and he went back again. He was glad to do it. He was glad to serve. And in one of his last letters home, he wrote, "Stay happy." So we have, and we're staying hopeful, and especially with the increased technologies and the underwater recovery possibilities, because he was shot down and crashed in shallow water. So we're going to stay hopeful with all the rest of you, and thank you, and God bless.
Thank you.
So I am the great nephew of an uncle who I'd never met. If it wasn't for my wife doing Ancestry.com, we would have never known. I would have never known. I had an uncle that was killed in, well, missing, killed in World War II and buried in Epinal, France. In her research and asking family members about him, a lot of them didn't know anything about him, where he was memorialized, and it was during the Battle of Hershheim in Eastern Germany, where at 22 years old he had, Corporal Jess Lopez, that's who I want to recognize. Thanks again, my wife. But what was amazing was we were on our way to Africa for some safaris, and we decided to stop through France and pay tribute to him at that memorial site. And while we were there, nobody knew from our family we were going there. I get a call from my mom and said, and this is from what I read, nobody had contacted our family since 1958. And, sorry. I get a call from my mom saying that the DPAA had contacted her. Sorry. Baseball. It doesn't usually work, but I tried anyway. Anyway, and she told me the DPAA had called her just a couple days ago, and she forgot to tell me. She didn't know that I was actually at the cemetery that very moment. So that was a miracle. So since then, we've been researching and taking the information to recognize him and share the information with our family. And it really touches me because I'm a 23-year Air Force veteran, and I get it, Not everyone in your family is as connected with those who were in the military or even show an interest, but I think it was a calling for me to gather the information and share that and take notes and give DNA and hopefully something comes of that. It was, details of the battle are pretty horrific, but I'm glad to be here. I'm glad everyone is here in support of each other, and yeah, I think that's all I could pump out for now, so.
Thank you, sir. In the back, in the red shirt.
It's really hard for me to speak. My name is John Andrew Howard, and I am the grandson of John Andrew Howard. I was named after him. He died in World War II in the Philippines, and that's mostly all I knew about him until I got this information from the DPAA. In mid-March 1945, the 108th Infantry Regiment arrived on Leyte and deployed to the Vilaba area to support the mopping up effort. By the end of the month, the 108th Company M was operating approximately 4 miles south of Vilaba, near the village of Abajo. On April 2nd, Private Howard joined the company, possibly as a replacement, and that evening he was assigned to perimeter guard duty. He heard several noises during the night, which he believed were caused by enemy troops, and the experience left him visibly shaken. At approximately 10 a.m. the following day, Private Howard was manning a perimeter outpost and reportedly still upset. He suddenly picked up a carbine, announced he was going to look for the Japanese he heard that night before, and disappeared into the thick jungle beyond the outpost. A few minutes later, 2 shots rang out, and Private Howard never returned. It says, shortly after Private Howard departed the outpost, a patrol of the 108th Infantry Regiment operating in the area was notified by radio to be on the lookout, but it returned without having seen him. The patrol from Company M then departed to look for Private Howard. It thoroughly searched the surrounding area until nightfall, but found no trace of him. The following day, additional patrols were sent out, but they were unable to locate Private Howard. The commanding officer of Company M subsequently stated that he believed Private Howard had been killed by enemy troops, who then carried his body away. Thank you for giving me this information.
Thank you, sir.
Great gentleman over here. I don't know how I'm going to make it through after hearing how it tore him up. So my name's Doug, medically retired out of United States Army, Airborne Unit, was a company commander, and moved around a couple different wars and battle spaces until I didn't dodge a Chinese rocket coming in one day and changed my life. But hey, here I am. So my uncle is Melvin Saxon. He was second lieutenant, bombardier on the Louisiana Lullaby, and flew out of Wadkey, I think, airfield over in the south, in the Pacific, and was making a bombing run with his squadron, the 319th of the 90th Bomber Group, Heavy, over Palau. His plane got shot up pretty bad. They said that it was the worst they'd ever seen of a squadron getting hit for over a half hour while they're making their bombing run in, and a half hour making their bombing run out. His plane took a white phosphorus that was, they let off a bomb in the air. It was white phosphorus, and it would come down, and they would hope that the Americans' bombers would roll through that and light their planes on fire. So the aileron up on the right near the engine caught fire, and they got peppered up pretty bad. They landed finally belly down in the water about 80 miles south off the island of Palau. Peleliu would be the southernmost island. Squadron, the bombers circled around, saw 2 guys get out, and no one else made it out. That plane went down quickly, but they dropped supplies, and the guys were waving at them. And, the research that's done by the organization is actually pretty good. I've got a lot of stuff from them. And, but being kind of the captain I am, that I never let it rest until I get us more. I've got more documents from family letters. And so you got to do that. You got to, if you have any contacts in all those old letters, go through them, because you're going to find information in there from other family members that were in that unit. And that's where we found out that my uncle and the pilot were the only two that survived. But the records say they don't know. But I've got letters saying differently from guys that were there, that were flying around. And so there's a lot of information out there, and you can really use the internet to get it, but also family letters. And I found these things in trunks, in old family trunks. And you got to go through that stuff. And you got to read it. You got to go through, and then you got to filter it. And, you know, you hear stories. They're great, but what's written is better. And, you know, you got to get that stuff. I'm going to be turning that over probably today so we can update the records. But I have no doubt these gentlemen will not be found. Water's deep. They never found the raft. They never found them at all. So it's tough. He had 4 brothers who all served. They all made it back. They all were in combat in the Pacific. And the last one passed away just last year. And only my mom and her sister are alive. And they're in their 90s. So my mom couldn't be here today. So I'm here representing her. And I got my $2 with me, so I'm going to leave you there before I bawl my eyes out.
And I'm a first-time here. I'm here with my wife, Holly. I want to thank her for coming. I'm here to honor my uncle, Captain Wilbur Glenn Jones, Jr. He graduated from West Point in '47. And very shortly thereafter was sent as an advisor over to the Korean Peninsula. He was with K-MAG in the early days, and at the Battle of Huichun, he was wounded and captured. He made his way to Camp 5, where he passed away due to his wounds on May 29th of 1951. Several people have now mentioned it. The last speaker mentioned it, as did the colonel in the beginning. We're all getting older. I see a lot of gray hair in here. But I've got to, kudos to the previous gentleman. There's a lot of information on the internet. About 15, 20 years ago, my father, I started to show him how to do it. And together, we started doing a lot of research. There's a lot of papers, there's a lot of books, there's a lot of innuendos, but it's all out there on the internet. It's crazy how much. I was fortunate enough to call the West Point and talk to the alumni advisor there, and he actually put me in touch with some of my uncle's classmates. And those classmates put me in touch with people that he was in KMAG with, up to and including his commanding officer, who explained what had happened after Huichun, and he himself went out and was captured and spent time in various camps. My uncle made his way to Camp 5, as I mentioned. One of the blessings of going to the Alumni Association and talking with some of his fellow classmates was one of his classmates who lived about, as the crow flies, about maybe 500 yards east of me. Just amazing. In all these years, I've lived in Rancho Santa Fe for 25 years now, 24 years. But this gentleman lived just right down the road. And he said, I want you to come down because I want to introduce you to somebody. And we got on his Polycom in his office at his home, and we started talking to a gentleman who lives in La Jolla. And I asked him if he knew Captain Jones. He goes, well, sure, I knew Glenn. My middle name's Glenn. I'm named after my uncle. And I said, well, how did you know him? He goes, well, we were in Camp 5 together. I said, wow, okay, this is crazy. I'm crying, my father's crying, Mr. Rosenblum, he's crying. And I said, well, do you know how he died? He goes, I do. I held him the night he died. That's a small world. And he explained to me that the next morning my uncle was taken down to the Yalu River, but unfortunately that time of the year, there's still permafrost. And so they would a shallow grave and put rocks on, but then the spring would come up and everything would just get washed downstream. And so my uncle is downstream somewhere of Camp 5 on the Yalu River on the south bank. So I'm here, like I said, the first time. I'm hoping to meet with my coordinator at 1 o'clock, and maybe I can learn more. But I challenge you, from the Vietnam and from the Cold War and OAF, just get on the internet. There's so much out there, and these people are still young enough to be able to tell the stories and pass down the knowledge. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing my person at 1 o'clock today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Over here.
Good morning. My name is John Christopher Lee, and I'm the son of Captain Leonard Murray Lee, United States Navy, who flew with V-114, the Aardvarks, on the USS Kitty Hawk. He was shot down on 27 December of 1967 off the northwest coast of Vietnam on a weather reconnaissance mission. His backseater was Lieutenant Commander Roger Innes, that's I-N-N-E-S, and they were shot down, but for many years was declared missing in action because the weather was overcast that day and his wingman wasn't able to see what had happened. Well, for many years I grew up. I was probably a year and a half old at the time that my father was shot down. And I didn't have too many memories of him, but I did have photographs and things. But every day of my life, I always asked myself a question, at least once, sometimes more than once, which was, where is my father? Is he alive or is he dead? And I couldn't get an answer. So at a certain point in time in the late 70s, the government had changed his status from MIA to KIA, and that gave some informative comfort. But still that question persisted. And it turns out that starting in 1992, the DPAA, which may have had a different name at that time, went to Vietnam and interviewed witnesses to the crash. These were militiamen, members of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam Army, and fishermen who were there at the time when this took place, because they corroborated the same dates, the same location, etc. So there's great evidence that my father's jet had gone down about 300 yards off of the coast. So in 1992, they interviewed these fishermen and militiamen who gave the reports. In 1995, the DPAA went and began to do more. They sent down a diver to do some initial recovery or initial exploration, and they saw wreckage. I should mention also that the militiamen had said that they always avoided that area for years because every time they threw their nets out to fish, it would get snagged on something, and they couldn't, they're like, what's down there? They knew something was down there. There was more information also, but I won't tell you everything just because of time. So DPAA went 1992, 1995, and then in 1998, they went again, and in 1999 began a underwater recovery mission in coordination with the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. There was over 14 United States Navy divers, archaeologists, medical technicians, and one of the divers actually suffered decompression sickness during the procedure. They went down, they mapped out the whole area in a grid, and began to use their high-pressure vacuums to bring up wreckage, materials, and things. And I was given a large report, this is it, that has detailed information on the recovery process. So they found my father's dog tag. They found wristwatches from my father and his backseater, Lieutenant Commander Innes. They found keys, money, and they found bone fragments. They also found, of course, portions of the jet, which was an F-4B Phantom. They found that all underwater and recovered it all. And once they found the bone fragments, they sent them to one of the DPAA places for analysis, and they contacted my uncles, my Uncle Sherman and my Uncle Charles, and they submitted DNA information, and they were able to compare the DNA of my uncles with my father and thus get a confirmation of his, that, you know, he indeed had been shot down. That was his remains. And this was in 1999. And then in 2000, 2001, there was an interment at Arlington for my father, Captain Leonard Lee, and Lieutenant Commander Innes. And my mother is still alive. She was unable to attend today, but I'm here, as many have said, representing them, my family, my uncles, my cousin Carol, who, you know, gave me information about this. And this is my first time here to the DPAA, because my mother had received letters but just didn't know what to do with them and didn't tell me. I was like, Mom. So this has been my first time to come, and I initially just came to support, but then was told that I could also have the opportunity to share our story and give hope, and, well, not give hope, but celebrate hope that we all have here in the recovery of our loved ones, and, you know, our histories and legacies and love that we have for one another and for our families. So I want to thank you all very, very much. I'm very proud and happy to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Back in the back, and then we'll get you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Ferdinand Gonzalez, and my granddad is Estanislao E. Gonzalez, who's U.S. Navy for 20 years, and but he got caught in the Philippines and part of the death march with 72 to 78,000 part of that march, and the only thing I know is he died from missing in action on that when he got become prisoner of war together with 68,000 Filipinos and 10,000 Americans. And my dad is only like 6 months old. He was born June 21, 1941. And then the war started, and I think my granddad never seen my dad when he was born. And all I know is my grandma with 4 sister siblings. They were all hiding in a cave together with other families and people, hiding from from the bombings around Philippines, and they almost got caught because my dad were like crying, and then the Japanese they can hear the Japanese nearby the cave, and I was surprised when someone contacted me and that if I'm related to Leo Divino. They found out about his address when he applied for U.S. citizenship, and then they asked me if I know Stanislao Gonzalez, and I said, yes, that's my grandfather. So the next year, and then they sent me to do a DNA test to find out about my granddad and who's connected to me, and I was like, how are they gonna do that? Because he's missing in action since 1941, and they said with the technology now with DNA, so I hope they'll find my dad, my granddad. And the only thing what surprised me before my dad died, 2007, the only documents, and I keep all the special documents of my dad, and one of them is my granddad's honorable discharge, but he's been in U.S. Navy for more than 20 years, and this is the only thing that's connected me to my granddad that they kept, that because because they lost everything in 1941, and this is really important to me. About my granddad, and I wish that they'll find him, or I'll be able to get him together with my grandma and my dad in the graveyard. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Hard when you sit in the front to get noticed. Hi. My name is Jody Fox. My husband, Terry Fox. We're from Wisconsin. We attended the first DPAA meeting in Green Bay in 2018 after submitting DNA samples from my uncle, from his 2 cousins and myself, 2 female cousins. So I'm a niece of a POW, Private Elmer Blunion. He was drafted in the Army in April of 1941. When was Pearl Harbor? December 7th, 1941. My father from Wisconsin as well was drafted Halloween Day, 31 October 1941. My point being, we were building up troops before Pearl Harbor. So my uncle was a medic, and he was a private belonging to the 192nd Tank Battalion. He was in Bataan, the Philippines, and they had to surrender. They capitulated in spring of 1942. The Death March was a 65-mile hike. Treacherous. If you've ever been to the Philippines, you know how hot and humid it is. 65 miles is something. He was a medic, and with the Japanese and their bayonets nearby, if you started to falter from the heat or starvation or dehydration because they didn't have food, didn't have water, they were bayoneted. So being the medic, he helped people who were faltering until they could regain strength again. So he helped many. They made it to the camp, and unfortunately, he contracted malaria. The mosquitoes, we didn't have any, medications to give them in a POW camp. He had an Army doctor in camp. My uncle had an enlarged spleen from the malaria, so it was pretty much advanced. So they had to do a splenectomy to remove his spleen. And no anesthesia, no antibiotics. He was placed on a canvas litter with the leather straps, and he was told to hang on to those leather straps for pain control while they cut open his side and removed his spleen. He made it through the surgery fine, but a few days later he died of abscess. So it's a very sad, agonizing time in our family's life, especially for my grandparents and my father. My father was in he was North Africa campaign, and he was a heavy machine gunner. And he was always in the crosshairs of all the German soldiers, and he came back alive. Obviously, I'm here. So my uncle was buried in a mass grave, and with many others, and I just want to thank DPAA. My husband and I went to the first meeting, I told you, in 2018 in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I thought, oh yeah, that was 70-some years, mass grave, you know how, cadaver bugs and all this stuff happens. And I said, no way, no way, no way. But they already had our DNA samples. And then luckily I get a phone call on the Epiphany on January 6th this year, and they found my uncle. Can you imagine that? They told me that they found a jawbone, and that's all they had. Well, then I get a phone call a few weeks ago, and they said they got a jawbone with 3 teeth. They found 3 more teeth. They have some of his cranium, his head bone. They found both of his humerus bones, your arm bones here, your upper arm bones, and a radial bone. So he's half a man, but he's a man. So now what happens is you get in touch with various people. I'm going to meet with Greg Gardner today, and he's going to help make the arrangements for military transport to a funeral home, to the gravesite. You have a color guard and I believe somebody playing taps. So it's very nice. And then what also happens, a lot of people come from support groups of POW, MIA, motorcycle groups. They'll be coming to the cemetery. So it's going to be a big memorial. So when that day comes for you, and I know it will, submit those DNA samples. That's what did it. And we're saying 83 years later, he's coming home. So God bless.
We have time for one more. We have time for one more. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm here on behalf of my Uncle Joe, Donald Uribe, U.S. Army, Korean War, MIA. Private First Class Joe Uribe, U.S. Army, was combat medic in the Korean War, June 25th, 1950. Confirmed MIA, 1953, July 27th. Joe was born in Santa Barbara on October 22nd, 1931, the son of Manuel Margarita Ochoa Uribe. He attended public schools in Santa Barbara and worked on the Hollister Ranch with his family, where his dad, Manuel, also worked and passed due to an accident. In Goleta, California, it's nearby. Joe liked to fish, hunt, and watch football games. One of his hobbies was helping injured animals, sometimes a bird or small game. He also liked taxidermy. During the course of that time, he became interested in a medical career. He enlisted at age 18 in the U.S. Army on November 30th, 1949. He completed recruit and individual training at Fort Ord in Monterey, California. On April 24th, 1950, on April 26th, he was assigned to the Army's Medical Field Service School, MFSS, at Brooke Army Medical Center, Fort Sam, Houston, Texas, and graduated with honors on July 14th. On August 3rd, he was sent to Camp Stoneman in Pittsburgh, California. On September 14th, he departed for Korea. After plane stops in Hawaii, Wake Island, Sasebo, Japan, he arrived at Busan, South Korea, on September 28th. On September 30th, 1950, Private Uribe was assigned to the medical company, 8th Cavalry Regiment, 1st Cavalry Division. On October 9th, the division began crossing the 38th parallel DMZ demilitarized zone into North Korea. Between October 10th and 17th, Private Uribe became attached to the E Company, 1st Platoon, 2nd Battalion, the 8th Cavalry Regiment. October 19th, last letter envelope. On November 1st, the E Company participated in the first combat action with the Chinese Communist forces in Korea. This was to the north. The Chinese were set on protecting the border. There were tens of thousands of Chinese who had begun to join into the war to protect the border so that we wouldn't invade into China. Basically, U.S. forces were overrun. On November 2nd, the 1st and 2nd Battalion E Company, 8th Cavalry Regiment, were almost out of ammunition, surrounded and overrun by Chinese soldiers. U.S. Army Review on November 3rd, 1951, Private Uribe Medical Company was attached to another company as aid man. He was last seen with when their position was overrun by opposing forces. That was mainly Chinese, in the vicinity of Unsan, North Korea. Military awards for Joe included the Purple Heart, the Good Conduct Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, Korean Service Medal with a 316 star, Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation, ROK War Service Medal, United Nations Service Medal, Combat Medical Badge, and the Rifle Expert Badge. That's one thing he learned at the ranch, how to shoot a gun. And that's about all I could tell about my uncle, and I hope one day I get to join him in a peaceful community. And I'd like to thank everyone who put this together, the DPAA, and I'd like to also give good thanks to my good friend who has done countless hours of research, civilian David Cornels, who is here to my right, and also to my sister for her support, Josie Torres. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to everyone who shared your stories today. Next, we're going to go into some briefing presentations. We're going to start off with a panel that's called A Day in the Life of a Recovery Team. They will be followed by our Partnerships and Innovations presentation, and then our laboratory will give a presentation on the recovery and identification process, followed by a DNA briefing. So with that, once they're finished, we'll have a question and answer period. And in the interest of time, they're just going to introduce themselves one after another. So Captain Banks, you'll introduce Rocky Gillette when you're finished, if you would, please. So with that, I'll turn the program over to Captain Banks, who will moderate the Day in a Life.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's brief, A Day in the Life of a Recovery Team. As you all know, DPAA's mission is to provide the fullest possible accounting for our missing personnel to you, their families, and to the nation. Today, we have the privilege of getting an inside look at how that mission is accomplished in the field. Please join me in welcoming our briefers. We have Captain James Reichard, Sergeant First Class Louis Rivera, and Mr. Greg Stratton. Gentlemen, can you please take a moment to share a little bit about yourselves? Greg, we'll start with you. Yes.
Good morning, and thank you everybody for being here. My name is Greg Stratton.
I don't think it's on. It's not on.
How's that? Okay, I'm going to go to this one then. I'm ex-Navy, so can't say help thanks for the Army. But so again, my name's Greg Stratton. I am an underwater archaeologist for the agency. So I've been at the agency about 7.5 years. I've done 8 recoveries and various investigations and site surveys.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sergeant First Class Louis Rivera. I am a team sergeant with the DPAA. Had the privilege with serving with DPAA for the past 2 years. Remote countries as Vietnam, Laos, and Solomon Islands.
Hello. Hey, I'm Captain James Reichard. I've been with the agency since August. My background is I'm an engineer officer. Also enlisted prior to, so I've been on both sides of the world. And then on top of that, I've been on one mission to Laos.
Thank you all for sharing your background. Now we'll turn to the mission itself. The team will be guiding us through the entire process from the moment they arrive at a potential site to the journey home. Captain Reichard, a recovery mission often begins long before any digging starts. Can you describe what's involved in getting the team and equipment to these often remote locations?
Yes, I can. So for us, for our missions, right, we take a C-17 with all of our stuff and our people when we fly to that said location. In my case, it was Laos. Once we land on Laos, we download all of our stuff, we kind of grab whatever else we need, and then we either drive to our destination, or we'll take a helicopter. So if you look at the page, the top right, that is us in a helicopter with all of our gear heading to that said location. Once we touch ground, then we will then move by vehicle to another location. If you want to take it from there.
All right, sorry about that. Had to do that. Just a little bit on the underwater, just real quick. So the bottom of the slide you see is some of ours. It's not always on a boat. That's a swamp. So we were 500 meters into a swamp in Papua New Guinea, ended up having to build that road that you see on the bottom left out of local wood. Then we built rafts, and then we built 9 platforms on logs and floated to complete the mission inside there. So just that's what those slides on the bottom are. So we are not always just on a vessel, on a barge, or land. We will go anywhere we need to be.
Thank you. Now, once you're on the ground, the next critical phase is the site survey. Greg, as the scientific recovery expert, what are you looking for, and how do you map out the area of operations?
So the site survey starts our investigation phase. This is after years of research. Many of you have met or talked about the research. We do a tremendous amount of research, and then we head into the field. The top is what we're trying to do is define a site. And what we look for first is obvious wreckage. We also look for impact zones, impact craters. And what you see on the slides there on the upper right is we're doing test holes. So nothing was very as obvious there, so they would have ran test holes. So in the test holes, we set provenience, we set the grids, and everything is done scientifically. So we go out, dig the test holes are about 50 centimeters wide and about 1 meter deep. Hold on, I'm sorry, my wife's making fun of me. 1.5 feet by about 3 feet is what they are. Which makes fun of me because all of ours is in meters. Then underneath in the underwater you see is we use completely different gear. We use remote sensing to try to find anything on the bottom that's surficial sticking up, or actually on the bottom right is a metal detector looking down into the sediment to see what we can see underneath. So everything is about defining the zone, trying to find the aircraft, and then correlating it to the exact aircraft of what we're looking for. That's the ultimate goal of an investigation and the survey.
Thank you. So after the survey, you have to establish a base of operations. Sergeant First Class Rivera, what goes into the site setup? It looks like you're often building an entire camp from the ground up.
Yes, so with site setup, after the site survey, the SRE determines where we're going to start excavating, and that's our potential of setting up a site. In many cases, we're building the site from the ground up. We use a lot of the local workers that also help in the efforts of finding our service members. So they have a lot of experience working hand in hand with us, so they know exactly the area where we want to work, and they have more experience than we do in that set area. So we set up screening stations from the ground up, water pumps, and then also we want to set up some stuff for our personnel to continue working and having to actually build that morale up and continue the search for our personnel.
Thank you. Now we get to the heart of the mission, the excavation. Greg, this isn't just digging holes. Can you explain the careful and varied techniques the team uses, whether on land, underwater, or on a steep mountainside?
Yes, the very first thing we do is set a datum. And the datum is a recorded marker on the site that we can always come back to. And that's where everything references from. So we set a datum, and then we lay out our grids. A typical grid is a 4 meter by 4 meter, so 12.5 feet by 12.5 feet is our standard digging grid that we found over the years to work very good, to be able to work efficiently, not too big, not too small of an area. So as you can see in some of the slides, the left-hand slide, that's the side of a hill. We've been down over 15 meters in a site, so over 50 feet deep. So to get that deep, you have to stage and tier it like there are. The center slide in the top, we also use mechanical. In the mechanicals, they are incredible how much efficient they can move with a skilled SRE guiding it as usual. On the top right, under the tree. So we dig under the tree. The excavation on the bottom too, again, I'm the underwater guy, so I slid some of these slides in. That's the best view you're going to get underwater is that center. Usually as soon as we turn our dredges on and start the big vacuum, somebody called it, that's what it looks like, and then everything goes invisible. And then the way we get everything back to the surface is the bottom right is by cranes and those baskets. So we use sealed catchment baskets so that none of the evidence can get out of the basket, either while we're dredging and or up and down in the water column. So that's how we get through everything on the excavation.
Every bucket of dirt is important. Sergeant First Class Rivera, a huge part of the process is screening. Can you walk us through what happens here and why it's so critical?
Yes, so the SRE, so the SRE determines, again, where we're excavating and we start digging. We do have personnel on the team that help dig in certain areas, and we collect that soil and bucket line, put them in buckets, bring them over to the screening station where we start using the water pumps to start going through the soil. As we're going through the soil, if you can see on the slide, soil gets on the screen, we start moving our hands around, looking for anything that's possible osseous material, and then we'll place those in a bucket and give it to the SREs to then determine whether or not it should be taken to the lab for further investigation.
Thank you. So this work is incredibly demanding on a personal level. I'll open this up to all of you. Could you touch on the day-to-day realities of life in the field?
Yeah, so, hello? Nope. Maybe now? Yeah, okay. Hey, so field life, right? It could be anywhere from doing a base camp where we just pretty much live in tents out in the middle of nowhere, and then that's pretty much how we live day to day while we're on site, or it could be where we actually live in like a guest house or hotel, right, and then proceed out to site. But field life is an easy way to put it. I wouldn't say luxury, but we're there through all the elements, getting through all the dirt to bring your loved ones home, right, or at least finding possible personal material that can help identify us and push us in that right direction as well. But go ahead, Greg.
So again, underwater. So the bottom slides are what we do. So that's a working barge on your bottom left. Good. This looks good. Okay. On the bottom left is a working barge. So that's about 8 kilometers offshore. So we boat out every day, and everything we do has to be on that barge. That cranes, the dive side, everything is set there. And then you can see the center slide on the bottom is how our divers enter the water. So they jump in. We use all military, Army, Navy, Coast Guard. Anybody that we can get to help us will come out and help. They all use hard hat diving, such as you can see there, because we use dredging, and they have to have constant comms with the top side. So everything has to stay on that barge. So we've done swamp, you see the barge, and then we also do ship-based, which is some of my colleagues are right now.
Last thing, we all have a shared purpose as well. The team that's out there with us, plus the locals that are also helping us in the search for the remains. Working schedule, we're there all day, pretty much every day for weeks, maybe even months out there searching. So we're going to continue to help find your loved ones.
This is the moment that all the hard work leads to. Greg, what is the protocol when the team finds something that might be evidence or remains?
So taking you a little bit through the slides, the bottom left is from one unit on a job that I did in Vietnam. So somebody had asked me before, what do we keep? So we bring everything to the surface that we look for, and then we look for there for probative evidence. That's evidence that could tie to one of the crew members or the actual aircraft. Once we do that, we actually bag and tag everything forensically in the field from that moment. And we start what we call in underwater is a desalinization process. So we put water in it, start desalinization. But we start bagging and tagging everything. The terrestrial side does exactly the same thing. So we start from day one, accountability, a chain of custody for everything that we're going to bring back, even though we do a field analysis with it all, we start the chain of custody that goes all the way through to a family member if we hopefully identify somebody. Some of the evidence that we do bring is that's a revolver from the seafloor in the center and what it looks like after we cleaned it to the right. Dog tags. And then the top left is something that we do. That was what we call a repatriation ceremony. That was from a job that we did with the Navy at 230 feet. Navy guys actually lived in a diving bell, diving staff for that. But the remains that we did find, we took ashore, and the local villagers in Papua New Guinea is where we were. They put the word out. Almost 500 villagers came. And what we did is we set up a ceremony since they were the custodians of those remains for the last 80 years. So they repatriated them back to us in a huge ceremony, and then we brought them home, obviously. But it was a way that we do helping build the culture with everywhere we go. Everywhere we go, the host nation makes us, either breaks us or makes us. You have to have the locals in your side to be able to do all of this. So that was a fantastic ceremony that we did. And people walked for 2 days to get there, to get to that meeting. So it was a phenomenal side.
After weeks or months of work, the time comes to leave. Captain Reichard, what's involved in closing down an excavation site?
Yeah, so closing down an excavation site, there's a lot of different steps, right? So not only, we pretty much take all the units that we have dug up, we do one final sweep to clean it all out, to get all that loose dirt over the last couple of days that have come up. We go through that as well to see if there is anything possible. We go through and we laid sandbags all around all the units. You're talking about 2,000 plus sandbags that we go through. Once we do that, then we put our photog up in a helicopter and they do an aerial, what you see here on the middle slide, which is an aerial view of our actual dig site. So that is something that we document to kind of show our progress and where it is. All right. And then also with that, we do have to break down all of our gear. So our wet screens, dry screens, all of our equipment, everything that we bring out, we pretty much close up and bring back with us as well. It is a very intensive piece, but it is bringing closure to that site for us, and then setting up for, if need be, for future operations in that area as well.
Thank you. Beyond the physical work, a huge part of the mission's success depends on the people you work with. Captain Reichard, can you speak to the importance of building relationships with local partners in the community?
Yes, so like we said, we do have workers that work with us, right? You're talking about anywhere from 50 to 200 local workers that come out and help during these operations. As you can see, the bottom right, that is me in the background throwing up the peace sign, right? So during the process, I call it hearts and minds, all right? So you get to know your workers, crack jokes with them. I gave them candy every once in a while. We actually played their music out on site. We played our music on site. Anywhere from dancing, singing, you know, keeping up the morale high. And then believe it or not, what that happens is they have a key eye for everything that's not in that soil. So they'll find things going through that sift that we might not see. And they bring it up. Or, you know, if their family kept on to something that they've held on for generations because of the war, at the end of it all, they might actually bring it up to us and be like, hey, my grandma or grandpa, you know, had this, we'd like to turn this over to you. With that being said as well, at the very end, we actually threw a party. So myself, my team sergeant, and my SRE pitched in money. We bought a cow, we bought a duck, had it slaughtered, and we pretty much gave thanks for all their hard work at the very end, and sat down and shared a meal with them.
And that brings us to the final and most meaningful step. Greg and Sergeant First Class Rivera, can you describe what happens at the end of a mission when remains have been recovered?
Excuse me. So this is what we call repatriation ceremony. This is always set up at the host mason. At the end of an excavation, we will bring back all of our material evidence including any of the possible human remains, anything else we're going to bring back that possibly associated with any of the crew members. That is an honor carrier you see in the top left. Most everything we do is through C-17s. The Air Force supports us heavily. We couldn't do our job without the Air Force. So we take the C-17s, load everything in, and then the bottom two is terrestrial. See, underwater, we have so much gear that we lay on the floor, but it's in between a bunch of gear. That's how you get home after the thing. You sleep on the floor, you sleep in the hammocks. We're out up to 90 days sometimes in the field working every day. So that is how we get home, and then turn it over to Sergeant Rivera.
Yes, and once we get home, once the plane lands, we already have a team of service members already waiting on the flight line to do an honorable carry. We'll still give in those honors to the service members that we have found as they're deboarding the plane. And, we give them the salute, and then they'll take the remains to the lab for further investigations. But the fight never stops. Once we come home, we have another team going right back out to do the same thing, and that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Reichert, Sergeant First Class Rivera, and Greg for that powerful and detailed look into your work. The dedication and professionalism of DPAA teams are truly humbling. The work you've seen today is a testament to our nation's enduring promise to achieve the fullest possible accounting for our missing personnel and to never leave a fallen behind. It is a mission of honor, respect, and remembrance. Thank you all for your time and attention. And up next, we have Rocky Gillette from Partnerships and Innovation.
Thank you all for attending.
We have one slight change of plans. Before Rocky comes on, the next group of dogs from Loves on a Leash are here. So when I call them, if you guys can come up and let's introduce you. We have Molly. We have Howard. Molly's a tiny little 110 pounds. Come on up, girl. Howard is next. And we have Jackson, Zion, and we have Honey Muffin. And can you guys, once you get up here, just let them get a picture real quick. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if you would like, just come and visit with them on your breaks. So next we'll have Rocky Gillette, who will talk to you about our Partnerships and Innovations Directorate.
I'm Rocky Gillette. I'm the lucky guy that gets to follow the cute puppies. And as noted, I'm the Director of Partnerships and Innovation for the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. It is such an honor to be here with you, the families and fellow veterans. I spent 30 years in the Army. I want to thank each and every one of you for your sacrifices for our country. And I sure appreciate the opportunity to be here in one of my favorite cities in the world. My father was a career Navy officer. We lived in Coronado, great memories of that. And I went to Cal Poly, Army ROTC at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. So I sure loved every minute of that. And man, it's great to be at a DoubleTree. I love those cookies. I have to confess, I've had 4 of them in 2 days. If you go up to the desk, like the printer doesn't work, your thermostat doesn't work, they may not fix it, they give you a cookie. I made the mistake, I turned it over, and I looked at the calories. I have had 2,000 calories of chocolate chip and walnut cookies in 2 days. I'm going to get home, and I know what my wife's going to say. You were at a DoubleTree, weren't you? But I'm really excited to share with you some of the ways that DPAA is leveraging strategic partnerships and innovation to provide answers to you, the families of the missing. We really launched our partnership program just several years ago. Today we have over 120 partners around the world who have added greatly to our capabilities and capacity to fulfill the accounting mission. All those things that you see that our organic people do so great, we also bring in partners to do some of the same things. So they're out there in the field all over the world as we're talking. There's a lot to share. I don't have much time, so I'm going to hit the wave tops, talk quickly, and I'm going to also show you a really cool video. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So we've increased our, can you all hear me okay? We've been so successful with partners that we did our 275th partner field mission this last year. 275 times we were out in the field like these terrific organic teams. And one of the missions that's depicted here is the deepest underwater field mission that the agency has ever done. These divers are using rebreathers. They're highly technical, qualified divers. They got down to 295 feet on a World War II recovery, and we're pressing that. So our partners bring tremendous expertise and capability, as that demonstrates. Next slide. And working with partners in and of itself is an innovation. We weren't really doing this in an organized way until, as I said, several years ago. But I'm going to discuss with you how our partners help not only with field work, but also research activities and innovation efforts. And our partners bring new and innovative equipment, experience, resources. We do a great job, but these folks are out there in the field, and they're doing new things so they can bring us their terrific skills and experience. As we say in the military, partners are a true force multiplier for what the agency does. And, on this slide you can see some examples of partners supporting DPAA with field work. That picture in the upper right is actually the Scripps Institute of Oceanography right here in San Diego, and that's them on a mission in Vietnam where the Vietnamese government helped them out. And we have partners doing things all over the world to include Europe, as you can see in that picture. One of the really terrific and unexpected benefits that's come from working with partners is we have these universities, academic institutions, nonprofits, and they bring in students, they bring in volunteers, they bring in veterans. We have a lot of veterans supporting our missions. So through this effort, all of these individuals, institutions are learning about this mission. They're learning about your sacrifice. They're learning about the sacrifice of your loved ones. And they become so passionate about this. Just as this team is, you could hear how they're willing to go out there and pursue these things. So are our partners. And then they continue to volunteer. They raise money to help pay their partner mission costs. And they bring us new ideas and suggestions, as I mentioned. Next slide, please. So we have a very robust partner development program to ensure we work with the best partners we can find. We consider things like their location. We have partners in various overseas locations, so they're already there with their equipment. They can get there faster, quicker, less expensive. And they have tremendous technology and expertise, as I mentioned. Again, over 125 active partners across the country and around the world, which is depicted in this slide. And we have this week we met with two of our local partners. I mentioned Scripps Institute of Oceanography. We got to go meet with them up at UC San Diego. Beautiful location, incredible equipment. They are a world leader in oceanography and underwater archaeology, do tremendous research projects with Navy side-scanning sonar, underwater autonomous vehicles. And we also met with one of our newer partners, San Diego State University. Our Dr. David Klein is here from San Diego State University. Their researchers are helping. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And we're hoping to create a regional center. We're starting to do this around the country where we bring in a number of multidisciplinary partners who can add research, artificial intelligence, GIS, all those cool things you're reading about. And I'm 68 years old, and I'm just trying to learn from my team how this stuff works.
But we're bringing in these partners to leverage their resources, do it in a regional level so we can have a whole group of different institutions. San Diego's a great example with San Diego State, University of San Diego, Scripps, and hopefully they'll even more increase our capabilities. And again, these partners they really strive to reduce costs. They actually go out and try and raise money to pay for some of their costs. On the average, partner missions are less expensive for us. So that's a neat thing. That frees up more resources to search for your loved ones. All right, next slide, please. So research is absolutely critical to everything that DPAA does. Our partners conduct, among other things, foundational and long-term research to support our field work, our disinterments, our identification efforts, and the case summary reviews that some of you will participate in today. And we created a really neat research initiative called the Hub and Spoke Network. We have a network across the country of 16 different universities and academic institutions where we have fellows, often military historians, who do this background research and support. I think we had someone mentioned there from Wisconsin. The University of Wisconsin participates, the Ohio State University, Florida, Texas A&M, and San Diego State, who I mentioned is here. At San Diego State, we have 2 PhD-level historians, and they're doing case summary research. They're working with the San Diego Air and Space Museum. That's what I'm talking about, this regional kind of approach. The Air and Space Museum has great archives, so they're digitizing and analyzing those. So, and by the way, good to see you, Dr. Klein. Thanks for coming today. Next slide, please. So our archaeology partners conduct terrestrial field operations across the globe. In 2024, DPA partners did 33 terrestrial missions in 14 countries. And these photographs showcase some of those. One is, let's see, we've got, with the jungle, that's in the Philippines with the University of Illinois in Chicago. We have one of our partners is Geoscope in the United Kingdom. That's almost all British vets, and they bring in American veterans. They've become so passionate about this mission. They're on their 6th recovery effort. And again, because they're in Europe, they can get to a mission site less expensive. Let's go to the next one. Next slide, please. And underwater is where we can really tap into some amazing resources. Our partners sometimes have vessels. You see that large research vessel there? Those are so expensive, but often the partners have raised funds to pay for their vessels. They can be all over the world. And on the the big picture on the right, that's again Scripps. That's them in Vietnam, where they brought in remote sensing underwater autonomous vehicles. It's amazing what they're able to do, and we're just expanding that technology every day, as are they. Okay, next slide. So this gets into innovation. It's hard to take a picture of innovation, right? But these do capture some of the neat things we're doing. And innovation is not a new concept at DPA. Our folks have been innovative for years. Our scientific analysis laboratory has come up with great things over the years. But the leadership said, hey, let's organize this into a strategic and collaborative program. And since I'm the Director of Partnerships and Innovation, I got to do that, and it's great. And I have tremendous folks helping me make sure that we're finding the neatest things in AI and data analytics, et cetera, that we can increase our capability and capacity. And that cool picture of the wing, so that's a 3D model taken from underwater remote vehicles. And why that's really helpful is when the divers are down at depth and it's murky, they've got a 3D model so they can orient themselves to where they are in the aircraft, try and find the fuselage and the cockpit where the probably more able to find remains. And then on the left is scientists working on what's called an ICEscapes program. ICEscapes it's really neat. It's a way to identify from bone and teeth where an individual is from. When you live in a certain area, you have a certain diet, and the scientists somehow can figure out from your bones and your teeth where you're from. Well, that's really key is if we have commingled American and foreign, the ICEscapes analysis can identify which is which and help us more speedily identify whether we're dealing with an American or foreigner. And by the way, that's Chico State, so another California partner that's helping us with that. All right, so next I'm going to show a really cool video, and it's pretty self-explanatory. I'll just say this is in deep water off of Hawaii. We used Ocean Exploration Trust and the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association. This cost us $0, and it's really cool stuff. So if you could roll the tape.
10 meters, slightly off dead ahead.
Yeah, that's looking significant.
We should be just approaching the large target now.
This is interesting. Okay, that is,
Yep.
this looks like the main wreckage.
Yep.
Yeah, roger.
Sites like this tell a story. It's the location of a tragedy, very likely a spot where service members lost their lives.
You can definitely tell that's the glass cockpit. You can see the reflection of the LED lights in it.
Yep.
Service members lost in conflict and combat leave behind friends, families, and, all too often, a mystery of their last resting place. Over 41,000 Americans are presumed lost at sea all around the world. This mission is in partnership with an organization called the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, or DPAA, a division of the Department of Defense charged with providing the fullest possible accounting for military personnel lost while performing their duties.
Our interest is archaeology, but the main task here is to evaluate this site for the possible loss of 2 people on board. That means we're combining a number of aspects to understand this site.
Partnering with organizations like the Ocean Exploration Trust provides the DPAA a unique avenue to explore deepwater areas. EV Nautilus is equipped with advanced technologies to fulfill this mission, including remotely operated vehicles, acoustic mapping sonars, and telepresence capabilities that allow scientists to participate in the mission from anywhere in the world. For this mission, we're working on a site located more than 1,800 feet deep. We're using acoustic sonar and remotely operated vehicles to investigate the site in an effort to correlate information about the wreck and, if possible, provide conclusive evidence of who was lost.
There has to be correlative evidence to point that it is that specific site. The data plates could certainly help with that, but that doesn't guarantee that we will make the correlation.
Wow. Now can we...
Something Aeronautical Corps.
It says Wright Aeronautical,
Wright.
W-R-I-G-H-T.
A project like this takes hundreds of people, thousands of hours, and a lot of recommendations. We were very lucky that we've had some other really competent teams like ODT go out and look at it for us.
Archaeological field surveys like this ultimately aim to bring home any possible physical evidence recorded as part of this mission. This is only one step in DPAA's thorough case progression, which involves teams of experts in various fields, including forensic anthropology. Thousands of hours of archive and laboratory research and hundreds of people work on a case that may make a determination possible. Once DPAA makes a positive identification, a message is sent to their respective service member casualty office, who then notifies the family that their loved one is accounted for. It is an honor and a privilege to be part of this journey. Learn more at dpaa.mil, where updates about this site and hundreds more around the world are announced.
So again, that was 1,800 feet deep. And that's where we're going. We're going to keep expanding our horizons and utilize this amazing technology, et cetera. I'm getting the high sign. So can I go to the next slide, though? I'll finish up with this. So as I've discussed, we're expanding our capabilities and capacity through partnering efforts to help all agency operations. And all of our partnering efforts ultimately are aimed at supporting our mission to account for your loved ones. These two heroes, sorry. These two heroes were recovered thanks to assistance from our California partners, Scripps and Project Recover. I haven't mentioned them, but they're a long-term partner. And one of them, U.S. Navy Radio Man First Class Wilbur Mitz, was from Seaside, California. He was recovered after 6 field missions to the side of his loss in the waters off Palau. Whew. So I just want to say that our partners truly share our commitment to providing answers to you, the families in our nation. Thank you until they are home. I think I'm followed by Dr. Greg Bird. Is that right? Great. Thank you.
You know what the cool thing is coming up here is that I'm following Rocky, and it's really hard to do that after a video. And I'm keeping you from lunch. So actually, there's a few more things to go before that. Anyway, folks, my name is Dr. Greg Berg. I am with the DPAA laboratory. I'm here to give you the scientific analysis brief today. And we're going to go over all things about the lab and the recovery efforts. And I know you've gotten a lot of this. And again, Rocky showed the cool video, so these might seem a little boring, but we're going to try to get through it and make sure it sounds fun. So these are my 4 topics today. Field ops, which you heard about in the day of the life, right? That was probably pretty awesome, wasn't it? Yeah, that was always a good one. We're going to talk about laboratory operations. We're going to go in depth on the identification process, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about special projects, which a lot of your loved ones are labeled into a special project or another. So here we go, field ops. We do 2 main types of field operations for the laboratory. We do archaeological recoveries and we do disinterments. Archaeological recoveries we do all across the world. They're organic to us or they're in conjunction with a partner, as you've heard. And they're led by a scientific recovery expert. Again, you heard Greg Stratton up here talking about what it's like to be a scientific recovery expert in the field for a day. So I feel like you've gotten a lot of that information at this point in time. Hopefully. The next one is disinterments. And what those are is when we go out to a national cemetery across the world. It could be in Europe, it could be down in the Philippines, it could be in our own backyard in Honolulu, and we exhume remains that we believe that we can identify of one of your loved ones. Again, that is led by a recovery expert. In the field, as Greg probably talked about, we do a lot of dirt work, right? That's a bunch of dirt right there. And to you guys, you're like, hey, wow, look at that, that's dirt. But to someone like me or to someone like Greg, that dirt right there tells a story. And that story kind of looks a bit like this, if I could draw it out onto it. The top layer right there is the topsoil and all the things that happen within the dirt. The middle layer is where I can see something happening due to the incident that I'm looking at. The third layer down that I can tell has been undisturbed. And then all the little arrows point to wreckage and other bits and pieces that could be evidence leading to a case resolution. So basically, archaeologists are dirt magic whisperers, if you will, right? We read dirt, we follow patterns, we map out science that way in the field. So what does that look like? Oop, wrong button. There we go. Well, part of dirt can tell us when I think something might be buried underneath it. So here we're looking at soil changes and differences in color and compaction, and in this case it clearly outlines a burial, at least to my eyes. I don't know, can you guys see that? It's pretty clear right there, right? So all we've really done there is we've gone through and we've taken the top layer of the dirt off and we've gone, hey, there's something else there, so let's put a shovel in the ground and dig that out very carefully and find out what's there, and here we have the results of that excavation, which is a casualty. So that is part of what we do. We read the dirt to figure out what can be underneath it. That one was pretty easy. There's a lot that are a lot harder than that. I can vouch for that. The next thing we do is we map everything into a world of 3D coordinates. Because if you think about the world, you have to know where you are in X, Y, and Z coordinates. Now you're like, what are you talking about? How many of you got a cell phone? Oh, better yet, who doesn't have a cell phone? Okay, all right. So you ever look at a photo you take and you can see that it's got some coordinates on there? Right? Or if you ever, you ping a tower, you hear about this all the time. The cell phone pings a tower somewhere and they know exactly where you are. We do the same thing as archaeologists. We map everything down on a site to its exact coordinates where it is in space. We do it in X, Y, and Z coordinates, so right, left, and up and down. And we do that so that we can put things back together. We only get a chance to do archaeology once. It's a destructive science. You never get a chance to dig a site twice. I'll rephrase that a little bit. You can continue digging on a site twice, but the area that you already excavated once is gone and destroyed forever. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. You guys are great. This is easy. So we map everything so we can tell exactly where it was. That helps us back in the laboratory when we have to link all the pieces back together. So that's why we employ so many archaeologists to do this scientifically right in the field the first time. We use the appropriate tool for the appropriate type of site that we have. Some sites, we're going to use an excavator. There's a site out in Europe right there. It was, we use a small little backhoe to clear off the topsoil because I can sit out there for a week trying to move that dirt and get blisters, or I can hire that guy, and in 2 hours I can get down to the area where I need to be. So we use the appropriate tool to do the job. Sometimes it's a tiny little trowel that you can see Rituals with there in the middle photograph, and he's just got a little tiny trowel that he's working on some material evidence. Sometimes it's a helmet hood for an underwater case that Greg would love to tell you all about. The rest of the time, we take all the dirt that we remove from a site and we run it through screens. You guys know about screening processes? Everybody's like, yeah, okay, you're boring me, stop, all right? So screening is just our way of making sure that we've recovered everything, right? We run all the dirt through a 1/4-inch mesh, which means I can catch even the smallest tooth in that, because that's what I want to make sure that I never, ever, ever miss, because that's an identification. Okay, moving on. Disinterments. The first thing that we do before we go out and disinter everything, a case is we have to reach a scientific threshold for moving forward, which is going to be partly the historians have to say, yep, here's your short list. We believe these people are associated with this particular incident. The scientists have to sit down and say, yep, that looks good for that short list right there, taking anybody off that we can initially from dental or stature or some other biological characteristics. And then the dentists look at the odontology, what's left in the records, what's annotated down onto an OMPF form, and we're going to make sure that the short list makes sense before we ever go and remove someone from the sanctity of the grave. Even though they're unknown, that's still a sanctified spot. So once we get that, and once we get a 60% DNA coverage threshold for commingled remains, we'll move forward with an exhumation. And again, most of these exhumations are happening either at the Punch Bowl, which is National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, which is in Honolulu, or a American Battlefields Monuments Commission cemetery, somewhere like Manila or Normandy, etc. A lot of our disinterments yield out to positive identifications. So this is a very big way forward for us for making those IDs every year. Okay, we good with field? I'd ask you for questions, but we're going to do that later, so hold on to those. Next, let's move to laboratory ops. We have two main laboratory facilities, one in Offutt, Nebraska, and the other one's in Honolulu, Hawaii. Both of these are accredited by the ANSI. ASQ, National Accreditation Board, that's a lot of letters, I know. what that really means, what your bottom line takeaway from this is, we do what we say, we write down what we say that we're going to do, we do that thing, and someone can come in behind us and check to make sure that we did exactly what we said that we were going to do. So you can trust in the results of our laboratories. We follow best practices for each of our fields and have a massive surety program to make sure that we are giving you, our customers, our loved ones, the best answers that we possibly can. Good? Happy. Perfect. Okay. Within laboratory operations, we're going to go back to that field work and we're going to pull in those spatial coordinates that we have for the material evidence and other evidence that we've recovered so that we can link those to our casualties or start building a case profile for a casualty. So for instance, we know exactly where this watch came from. Right? We can go back to those 3D coordinates and figure out where that watch came from and where that was linked to in terms of spatial recovery of, say, remains or other material evidence. And you're like, hey, what's material evidence? And I'm like, hey, it's all this cool stuff right here. Right? Material evidence for us is anything that can be individually linked to a casualty, or material that will tell a story about how that casualty came to be on that spot in the world. Now, aircraft wreckage could be considered material evidence if it's got something official that can be tagged to an incident. So for instance, in the video, you saw them getting very excited about that data plate, right? Those can be hugely helpful because we're going to correlate a site based on perhaps a data plate. But mostly we get even more excited when we get a ring that's got someone's name engraved in it, a set of dog tags. Eyeglasses, believe it or not, are pretty cool because your prescription eyewear can be linked back to you based on the records in your military files. And I bet you didn't know this, but your eyeballs' prescriptions are pretty much equal to, or yeah, it's a little equal to some of the DNA technology that's out there because prescriptions can be super rare. So that's actually another piece of evidence that we can use toward making an identification. Is that for me? Might be. Moving forward, the next thing we're going to talk about is human remains. And I hope you guys are all okay with this, but this is what we do as forensic anthropologists. We analyze and look at human remains on a daily basis. We are going to answer the first two very basic questions. Is it bone and is it human? And believe it or not, those two questions can eliminate out about 30 to 50% of all the cases that come, or individual pieces of bone or like bone that come into the laboratory. Just because we get so much stuff in the field that looks like bone or is animal, and we have to cull that material out from the stuff that we're actually needing to look at. When we do get remains, we're going to generate what's called a biological profile. Age, sex, ancestry, stature, any trauma, any individualizing characteristics of an individual from the remains that are present for us to look at. We're going to take that, we're going to compare it to antemortem data, and that's going to be a piece in the puzzle that we're going to use to identify your loved one. We also do odontology, which is the study of teeth, and all of you have gone to the dentist at least more than once, and you've got a nice little dental record somewhere. It's those dental records that we can compare to the remains that we have out on a table that can lead us to a positive identification. We love when we get positive IDs from dental remains. It's an amazing thing. It saves a whole bunch of time. The problem is most positive identifications from dental records occur because we have existing antemortem x-rays. We didn't really start getting those until the Vietnam War. So, for most of our losses, Korea, World War II, we don't have those. We only have handwritten records, and those are not usually considered a method of positive identification. Sometimes they can be, but usually they're not. But it's excellent supporting strong evidence toward an identification. Another fun one we do, we really like this came out of innovation, as Rocky was talking about. The lab innovated this process in about 2012. We started really looking at chest x-rays. There's a very long kind of history associated with taking an x-ray and comparing it to existing remains in a laboratory setting. It turns out that military individuals who enlisted had chest x-rays taken when they enlisted, because what we didn't want to do is send anybody out to the front line with tuberculosis, right? And so they did these induction chest x-rays. One day, NARA called us up and said, hey, we've got all these x-rays that are rotting and going bad. Would you like them? And we said, oh yeah, we'll take those. And we created this whole program around looking at seeing if we could determine an identity based off of someone's clavicles and upper thoracic and lower cervical vertebrae. And this is what we call chest radiograph comparison. And it turns out that we can do this really, really well. And this really helps with our Korean War losses. We've done well over 100 IDs, maybe like 120 now, that have chest radiograph comparisons as either an exclusion or an inclusion method. So this is one of our main sources of information for us for making an identification. The last little bit I'll touch on, Rocky said a little bit of something on isotope analysis. I could talk to you guys for about 7 hours on isotopes, and I really want to, so who's with me? Okay, ready? Here we go. Oh, I'm being told no in the back. Oh, man. Okay, anyway, the short rundown of isotopes is you are what you eat. We can look at the microscopic chemical signatures within your bones and your teeth and figure out what type of diet you had. And you're like, who cares what my diet is? I subsist on Twinkies and Coca-Cola. And I say that's perfect because that's what US people do. But folks over in Asia subsist on rice and, not Coca-Cola, right? And those things separate out very nicely chemically. So I can look at the isotopic signature of your bones and quickly separate you out from someone who is not likely ours. We can also look at the teeth, and we can look at your drinking water that you ingested while you were growing up, and we can map you onto the face of the world, which is also very, very cool. So do I have those 7 hours? Can we talk? Oh, man. Okay. So isotope analysis is another great tool that we have that we absolutely love to use, and it is being super helpful with cases like from Cabanatuan, for instance. We're sorting people using isotope analysis, and also for Southeast Asia, being able to quickly and effectively separate out those that are ours and those that aren't. Okay. I have no idea how much time I have left. I've got 3 minutes. Too much. Okay, identification, here we go. We're going to talk about IDs. And the way we're going to talk about IDs is in terms of circles, and circles are analysis profiles. And so you can look at this slide and go, wow, look at all those circles. So an ID happens where all those circles converge and there's only one possible person left in there. Now, that circle, where all those circles group, are going to be shielded by our QA process, so you can believe what we say and say what we believe. So let's talk about an ID. Here's our case example. Historical research, our first circle up there says, okay, we've got 7,800 people missing from the Korean War. We have an engagement in mid-1950. In that engagement, we have 71 soldiers that are missing. So we've gone from 7,800 to 71 from our historical research. We go out and we do a disinterment from the punch bowl because we believe that through additional historical research and looking at the X-files, we can get that 71 number down to 11. So we've already knocked down our possibilities fairly quickly. We take that, we run it through, we do the exhumation, we do some testing, and one of the first questions we have is, are these all one person? And we go over to our chemicals, and we look at isotopes, and we see that, yes, there are some variation in those numbers, but those numbers all match to a single individual based on the science behind that. So we know I've got one individual here. That's cool. But we do DNA testing. And we do whole genome testing, and we figure out that out of all of the possibilities in Korea, the DNA profile from those remains matches 2 people, which is kind of a bummer because we usually like it only to match 1, right? But now we've got 2. So we've got to figure out how to separate these 2. Is it person X or is it person Y? So then we'll go over to our anthropology, and our anthropology says, okay, this is a male European, 20 to 25 years old. He's 72 inches tall, and he had weird extoses on his bones. And we go into the historical record. I'm taking more than 1 minute. And we get in there, and we find out that a letter from the mother said he had some interesting deposits, bone growths on his bones, and that matches the extoses that we're seeing. Then we go to dental, and dental says, hey, we've got an extraction pattern here, and we've got a leftover tooth root, which is weird in and of itself because that typically doesn't happen. We go back to the record, and the family had already been queried back in the 1950s, and they said, no, he had no dental work, but right before he left, he said that they extracted 2 teeth from him. Well, there's our extraction, and if we go to his actual record, we can see that the dentist annotated that the tooth root broke off in situ and was healing in the process. So now we're down to pretty much 1 person. We do some chest radiograph imaging, and we find out that the clavicles line up with the upper vertebrae perfectly to this 1 candidate. So now we've taken all of our circles and we've grouped them all together, and where they come together, there can only be 1 individual that matches that profile, and that's where we make that identification. I'm sure that was like a blast and kind of fast, but cool, right? Yeah, there we go. All right. That's how we do that. I'm going to wrap you out with a quick little thing on special projects. And special projects, as many of you know, are the way that the lab groups out different cases together. We've found that special projects are complicated by commingling and general craziness with the way that individuals are recovered in the past and then buried. So we've created special projects across the laboratory space that are anything from the hell ships that some of you are involved with, to Cabanatuan, to Battle of Tarawa, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is just a snapshot of all the projects that we have going on right now, the number of IDs on there to date. This information is fairly accurate. There might be missing 1 or 2 IDs over the last couple of weeks, but our special projects drive our identifications. So I'm going to leave you with that, I think. I think I got 1 more slide. And this slide is actually talking, 2 more slides, about Cabanatuan projects. And this is how we figured out that Cabanatuan was a real hot mess for us. It was the first time that we ever pulled anything out of cab. We did some DNA testing on the first skeleton and came up with like 10 different DNA sequences, which was not good. So hence the evolution of special projects. Bottom line, last year, 231 individuals identified by DPAA, bringing them home to your families. Hopefully this year, we're going to meet or beat that record. So thank you very much for your time. Now, if you thought I was bad, now you get to listen to Julie Dermeres, who is actually the world's expert on DNA, and she's going to talk to you about some very, very cool innovations that are happening at the AFDL. So please listen carefully to this. This matters.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Berg. Can everybody hear me okay? Excellent. All right. So, like he said, my name is Julie Demarest. I'm with the Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory. We are in lovely Dover, Delaware. We're located on the Dover Air Force Base. I am actually the technical leader of the Family Reference Sample and Laboratory Automation Group. So I am the scientist who is in charge of processing all of the family references that you donated either today or previously. Standard disclaimer, any opinions that I express are my own. So I know we have a lot of first-time meeting attendees in the crowd today. Over half of you have not been to a meeting before. I'm going to speak a little bit just about our organization and about our laboratory, just to set the stage. We're going to talk about how unique our laboratory is and what we bring to the identification mission. And then I'm going to get into new testing methods. We are constantly striving to develop new testing methods to advance the testing that we can do, and I'll get into that a little bit. And then finally, just your role in the identification process. Obviously, you are all here today because you want to participate in the process, and we appreciate that so much. And sometimes the best thing you can do is donate your DNA to help us with that. So the Armed Forces Medical Examiner is actually our parent agency. Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory falls under AFMES. We were established in 1990 to assist in the identification of U.S. service members using DNA testing. We are an accredited forensic lab, just like Dr. Berg mentioned. They have many quality assurance procedures. So do we. We have both international laboratory accreditation as well as accreditation through the FBI quality assurance standards, as we are a forensic DNA testing laboratory. We have been a partner agency with the DPAA since 1990. We've had a number of notable casework advances over the years. The first time we used mitochondrial DNA testing in past accounting casework was 1992. We have continuously worked to improve our processes to get more information out of the remains that are recovered and tested throughout the years. I'm not going to be able to cover everything today because I know that we are running a little behind already, but I will end my talk with our newest advancement, which is the SNP technology that we brought on last year. You may or may not be familiar with the biology behind DNA. There are actually two primary types of DNA in each cell. You have your nuclear DNA, which is in that big blue center. You get one copy of that per cell, and that is what you get half from each of your parents. But you also have mitochondrial DNA in your cell in much larger quantity that's been inherited just from your mother. So there are benefits to using each of the types of DNA, and I'll go into those in a little more detail. Mitochondrial DNA, as I mentioned, exists in thousands of copies within your cell. DNA in older samples, skeletal remains, is often very degraded. Mitochondrial DNA is more resistant to degradation due to its smaller size and its circular structure. We also have a greater depth of family references when you're looking at the mitochondrial DNA line. All of the people in green there are eligible maternal relatives who can donate DNA. This has allowed us to develop methods for highly degraded samples and to get DNA from those for comparison. We also do STR testing through nuclear DNA, which is both autosomal and Y chromosomal. Your Y chromosome is actually only paternally inherited, and only males have it. So it's essentially the counterpart to mitochondrial DNA. We have modified this testing specifically for DNA samples and have validated a low copy method that is actually not used by other forensic laboratories in the country, but is incredibly successful through the work with the DPAA samples. We also have standard autosomal STR testing. This is probably what you are more familiar with if you watch forensic DNA shows. Criminal labs typically use autosomal STRs. They are good. They're just the most challenging to get to work with the unknown remains, the unknown samples. It requires a large amount of DNA, and you can only really make comparisons within very closely related individuals. So it's not as expansive, and it can often be more challenging to get that to work. We have multiple validated DNA extraction methods. That's the first step in the DNA process. You must extract the DNA out of the remains that you've recovered. Often a laboratory will have 1 or 2 extraction methods. We have 4 because there are so many avenues for testing that we have to pursue depending on the type of references available and the quality of the remains for testing. As you can see here, this is actually the extraction method and the percent recovery for different types of the DNA testing that I've mentioned so far. The green skeleton, and that's by skeletal element. Different elements actually work better or less well. The highest percent recovery is with mitochondrial DNA testing for the reasons that I've mentioned before. So after, we need to have multiple testing methods, we need to be flexible with them, and we really need to assess the type of sample and the details of the incident in which it's been recovered in order to determine the best way forward for testing with that particular sample. We actually had the opportunity to work with the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology. They took a look at some of the DPAA samples that we are working with, and you can see that our remains are in purple. Ancient DNA, 40,000-year-old remains are in green. You can see that we are on the same level in terms of the quality of the sample and the amount of DNA that's present due to so many environmental factors that have gone into the recoveries. And so that just helps to give you an idea of the challenge associated with this processing. One of our newest technologies that we've been briefing for the past couple of years is whole mitochondrial DNA, whole genome capture. Instead of just looking at a portion of the mitochondrial DNA, we look at the entire circular structure, and that gives us a much higher discrimination power. We use custom baits, and so I've made the reference here, just like with fishing, you need the correct bait to pull out your target, whether that's a specific sequence of human DNA or a sea bass. You need the right bait to capture it, and that is what we have developed and validated when it comes to whole genome sequencing. It allows it to be captured and then multiplied with just that fragment, removing everything else that is not going to be useful for that identification. Mitochondrial DNA success has been tremendous, and we are increasing that capacity still. We averaged 134 profiles generated in FY25. At present, for FY26, we are at 181 per month. So we continue to increase our efficiency and our processing capacity. Since 2016, over 9,000 mitochondrial DNA samples have been sequenced in whole genome, and all maternal FRS have been processed in whole genome since 2021. So that was a huge advancement. We're also able to go back to previous references as needed and reprocess those to be able to make the comparisons as needed. We still are not able to solve every case based on the methods that I've presented so far. There are times when we don't have enough information, we can't get enough information using the testing types that I've gone over. And so we continue to research and innovate and come up with new methods. For us, that led to the use and the validation of a custom SNP capture panel. SNP stands for single nucleotide polymorphism, and it's actually the type of DNA testing you may be the most familiar with because it's the same technology that a commercial ancestry kit uses. So 23andMe, Ancestry, Family Tree, they are using SNP testing. They simply are using SNP testing that is compatible with higher quality and quantity DNA. So the challenge for us was validating, developing a method that worked with the challenging DPAA samples that we receive. We actually went online with that for casework approximately a year ago. Let's see. And we are now able to expand our reference collections out to all fourth-degree relatives. So the SNP testing really let us expand the eligible references that we could collect and test. And I know for some of you who have been here before, maybe in the past you were told we couldn't collect your sample, we couldn't do anything with your reference. That may be different now. If you want to find out if you're eligible now, please come speak to me and my staff at the collection table. We are here all day and we're always happy to answer DNA questions. So just like Dr. Berg went through the idea of how you can kind of start with a larger group of individuals and then narrow down through different methods of testing, different ways of excluding or continuing to include an individual, the same is true with SNPs. Often we can start with a group of service members. If we do the traditional mitochondrial DNA testing, we can get it down to a small group of people, but we may not be able to get it to a single individual. We can then take those references and perform the additional tests that lead to an identification. And with SNPs, that is helping more and more of those cases get completed. So these are just some SNP comparison results. When you have a high quality SNP comparison and reference, you can have a statistic in the billions. If the world's population is 8 billion people, you can have literally 100 times that only this one person could be related in the ways that their FRS says they are, and that can lead to a positive identification. Our first casework identification was in March of 2025, so just a year ago, and that was actually Eugene Mandelberg. His was a case that could not be solved otherwise due to some challenges with getting enough references for the situation he was involved in, but with SNPs, we were able to finally identify him. Right now, we are still in the initial phases of testing with SNPs because it is a newer procedure, but our success rate has been very high, and we are working to scale that up in the future. To that end, we actually have just recently published the validation that brought SNPs online because it was a very unique set of circumstances that we validated. It's not all a commercially available system. We had to develop that and validate it. And we chose to publish that in a journal that is publicly available so that the forensic community can also learn from our work and use our work when available. We like to be a leader in the field of human identification and share the work that we do with others who may also find that useful. So this is just sort of an overview of the different types of testing that we do. As I've gone through, we have multiple testing methods. There are some cases that can be resolved pretty quickly, maybe using just the mitochondrial DNA, either control region or whole genome. We have the ability to add in the low copy, the YSTR testing, nuclear DNA, and then next generation sequencing with the whole mitogenome as well as the single nucleotide polymorphism testing. If you are in the know on the field, you might hear about forensic investigative genetic genealogy. That's definitely a very up-and-coming thing that you also hear a lot about in human identification outside of DPAA work. We are currently working to develop, again, a method that works for our samples and uses the forensic investigative genetic genealogy of some of the other testing databases that are available to us. That would be a very specific scenario. Obviously, we have so many things that we do internally. We would consider this for cases where everything else has been tried and has not led to an identification. But it is really interesting, and if there's something you'd like to talk to me more about, I'll be here for the rest of the day. It's something that I have a little experience with now. So far, we've tested 10 sets of remains as part of our proof of concept. Out of those tests, we have had essentially 3 that have produced usable sequence. And so we are still working very hard to get this to the point where it is going to be applicable to DPAA casework on a larger scale. Definitely it's sort of a proof of concept level right now, but I think it is the future of forensic DNA testing in a lot of ways. I know that there have been some misconceptions around this, especially the idea that if you have done DNA testing through a commercially available test site, that maybe your DNA is already available to us. That is not the case. So if you want to contribute to identifications, please donate directly to us. We have our own database. We protect that. We don't share that with anybody. And that is the most straightforward way versus, going through a third-party testing. As I've gone through today, we have many different tools in our toolbox. We have many different technologies that we use depending on the sample type. And we are constantly developing and validating cutting-edge technology, and we are leaders in the field. I know people wonder, why does DNA testing take time? We often have quality and quantity issues, obviously, and we have to do a lot of work to overcome that. We are developing and implementing methods as we go, and that's very important to us for this specific casework. So basically, what does this mean to you? You are the family members who are here. DNA testing is complicated. It's very case dependent. Every case can be different. But we constantly monitor success rates. We reassess, we optimize. We go back to previous tests. If testing has not worked and we develop new methods, we will go back to those samples and retest. We get additional information. From my perspective, one of the biggest things has been that we've expanded our pool of eligible family references, and so we have that many more people that we can use to help us with these identifications now. Thank you to everybody. I know that we are all ready for lunch. Many people have contributed to this work, obviously, and thank you all to you for being here and for helping us with the identification effort.
Okay, next we're going to go into our Q&A session. So if I could ask all of the presenters to please come up on stage, as well as Heather Harris and Lieutenant Colonel Smith and Sergeant Major Flores. So similar to the remembrance ceremony, if you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll have someone with a microphone come to you, and I will call on you. Please stick to questions that are general type questions. If you have questions specific to your case, please get with your service casualty office, and they will help address your questions. So, do we have, where's Rocky? We need Lieutenant Colonel Smith and we need Rocky Gillette. No, you won't. Come back here, Sergeant Major.
Okay, we'll get started. If you have a question, yes, ma'am. Can someone bring a microphone here, please?
Hi. Are the 39 remains at the Manila Cemetery, were they all taken from the Tokyo prison, or are they from various places in South Pacific?
They would be from various places in the South Pacific, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Andy.
When you're referring to sample sizes, either for the isotope testing or for DNA testing, and you're talking about large versus small sample sizes, what does that exactly mean, large versus small?
Okay, can you hear me? For DNA, that is typically as small as 1/4 of a gram to 1/2 gram of bone, so it is an incredibly small amount.
For isotope testing, we usually like about 1 gram, but we can get away with about 1/2 gram. So I don't know if anything is considered large anymore.
Thank you. Do we have to be concerned about the great work that you're doing, about our budget? Are we concerned that we're going to have any cuts to our budget with our situation?
Colonel Rankin, that would be...
In regards to the budget, what I would suggest is that you as private citizens reach out to your representatives, tell them about this mission, tell them about your concerns, and ask how can we appropriately resource, organize, train, and equip the agency. And giving them that information as constituents is an appropriate way to do that. Another way that you can support the endeavor is work with the VSOs. They also have a powerful voice that they can go to the Hill and talk about this mission and why it's important. So what I'll say is the president's budget is the president's budget. It does change from year to year. And so based upon the priorities of the United States government and where we fit, that's the budget we get, and that's what we do to execute. And so we do our best to make sure that we appropriately resource that budget as an agency to get after this sacred mission. Thank you.
Back in the back.
I have a question about, given there's a finite number of unknowns in the cemeteries you work with, why don't you exhume all of those, do DNA testing, and then put the data aside to be matched with national sources of data as it becomes available over time?
That's a great question, and I really like where you're going with that, but that's a lot of effort for a lot of things that we don't necessarily know. Some unknowns might not be ours. Some unknowns might take decades to ever figure out. So what we would prefer to do is do the historical research necessary to limit down the pool of casualties to a manageable number before we ever go after that particular unknown. There are, as you say, there is a finite number. I got it. It's just not very manageable from a scientific perspective to do that. It's much better to do it in manageable chunks that have known historical backgrounds to it, as well as then we can build the case, as you saw in the ID sort of brief, that we can put that together a little bit easier. You've got to follow up with that?
So how about we let Heather speak a little bit about the process? Heather Harris is our director for Europe Mediterranean Directorate, and she is also a historian. Go ahead, Heather.
So the way it works for us right now is, starting in 2016, we received policy from above us at Department of Defense to allow us to conduct more disinterments. Hopefully you've seen in the presentations that you've been shown today that resulted in lots more disinterments from us. But that policy basically tells us what standards we need to meet to be able to disinter an unknown. And what it says is that we need to be able to, more likely than not, identify the unknown
if we disinter it and it's an individual. And if it is a set of group unknowns, then we need to meet a 60% threshold. And to do that, we have to be able to do the historical research to determine who that unknown might be in a broad sense, the scientific research in advance to narrow that list down before we put that package up for approval above us.
I'm familiar with your processes, and in fact have been the benefit of an estimation for a case I'm involved in. I want to get involved in that specifically. But it seems, I sort of understand your answers, but it still seems, I think in the Philippines where I'm most familiar, there's something like 1,200, 1,300 MIAs. That just seems like a very small number, given the other mass numbers you guys deal with, that you might want to do, there might be a process by which, with advanced DNA processes you had just been described, that you'd be able to generate data that in the future might be useful. And I'll leave it
So,
at that.
sir, in addition to the process that we go through that is mandated to, as Heather just described, we also have to ensure that there is the capacity in the laboratory to be able to bring in those remains. And it's a kind of a balance between laboratory capacity and the opportunities and the ability to disinter those remains. Over here.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to thank you all again for the efforts and what you do with your partner organizations. I think it's hard for me to find the words to convey my appreciation. I think that probably goes for a lot of people in the room. Been following the successes that Operation 85 has had with moving forward with hopefully identifying some of the unknowns associated with Arizona. Do you think that maybe a similar partnership could be used elsewhere in some other cases? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, sir, Op 85 has been doing a tremendous amount of work. They're very close to meeting the 60% threshold to allow us to be able to disinter those 85 or 84 remains that are in the punch bowl from the USS Arizona. The model that they've used is a model that we're looking at to see whether or not there is the possibility of using that same process for other disinterments around the world. Right now, we don't have a formal partnership with Op 85. We are working very closely with them, but it's not a partnership arrangement like we have with the Partnership and Innovation Directorate manages. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I might be wording this incorrectly, but it's a DNA question. My mom, who was estranged from her two brothers, and then I have my uncle that is the MIA. When they were originally trying to collect the DNA, they didn't want it from us, the mom's daughters, because she had 4 girls. They were really looking for the DNA from my 2 uncles that I've never met. And I was wondering what is in their DNA that's not in the female DNA that they were looking for. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Specifically, men, and only men, have the Y chromosome, and the Y chromosomal testing can be very useful. As I mentioned, we have a low copy number technique that we can do specifically for Y chromosomal testing. It's because you only have 1 copy per cell if you're male rather than 2 copies. So we do targeted collection requests for specific types of DNA, sometimes depending on the circumstances of the case. Now, your mother and all of her children, if she was a full sibling of the service member, should have the same mitochondrial DNA. So we would want to collect from your mother or from you or your sisters. And if that hasn't been done already, I can... Excellent. Yes. So that gives us multiple testing types So we probably were looking to add the Y chromosome onto the maternal, the mitochondrial DNA that we already had.
We've been pounding the pavement trying to find those two uncles.
You had a question, ma'am?
One question I have is, what is the size of a gram of bone? I have no idea. Is it the size of rice, a grain of rice? Smaller than that? Oh, it's a little larger, like a bean
It
or
looks like a
something about
raisin
that
to me.
size. Pretty small.
Heather can answer you, about the size of a raisin.
I'm just saying that based on his.
Raisin, okay, thank you. And my second question is, what's the latest on any chance to go into North Korea and do any investigation?
Do you want me to take it, or you want to?
I'll wait.
So we, as you probably know, we've not been in North Korea since 2005. We had negotiations, we were set to go, and then some things happened that prevented us from being able to go back. And since March of 2019, we've had no communications with the North Koreans. We have reached out through various different non-government organizations to try to get information and find out, but even those non-government organizations are currently not able to operate in North Korea. So at this point in time, we're ready to go back when we get the green light to go, but unfortunately, the North Koreans aren't interested in really talking with anybody at this time. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, just a quickie. So, yeah, about North Korea, then in 2019, we had 55 boxes, that they said, like around 100 or more individuals. They said something about, like, they found that actually there was 200 and how many individuals that were found in those boxes?
We're talking about the
K55.
K55?
K55.
Yeah.
The 55 boxes, they said that it was actually more than 200.
Yes.
About how many? 260?
70-ish, 78, 78.
Oh, okay, cool,
That
cool.
sits in my head for some
Okay, thank
reason.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. In the back?
Hello. I'm just wondering, in the pursuit of our American loved ones' remains, how often are we finding the remains of the locals and the people from the other country, which is wonderful because that's also somebody's dad, brother, uncle, etc. And do they have a program set up like ours?
So we've got 3 different processes that we go through, but we've got 2 main groups that we deal with, Japan and Korea, that we actively do joint repatriations with. So when, for instance, in the K55, there were quite a number of Korean soldiers that were commingled into that. Those have all been repatriated back to Korea. When we're out in the Pacific, we've got partnership's the wrong word, we've got MOAs with Japan that says when they recover remains, we get to do what's called a field forensic review with them. We sit down, we look at the bones together. We decide if anything looks like it's American because they're targeting Japanese losses. And if it does, they will release samples to us and we'll test those. Likewise, if we go out and recover a site and it has the potential to be a Japanese individual that we can then prove is Japanese, we will repatriate them back to Japan. We have very strong agreements with Palau and several other countries in the Pacific to repatriate those remains, and also to include some European countries. So yes, we do give them back as soon as we can figure out that they're not ours, because you're right, that is someone else's loved one.
Yes, in the back.
Hi. I may have missed this because I had to leave for a breakout meeting. But I've just been so impressed by this today. Thank you. Are there opportunities for civilians to volunteer for this effort?
Yes. If you go on the DPAA website, there is a volunteer tab. It will give you information on how you can volunteer.
Okay, thank you.
Top right corner
Sergeant
of the
Major says
homepage.
top right corner of the homepage.
Volunteer. There's a tab, click, right down there.
Anyone else? I know everybody's anxious to go to lunch. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, then thank you for your being up here today. Also, after lunch, we will have the conflict-specific breakout sessions. If you are a World War II family, you'll gather in this room here. If you're a Korean War family, it'll be in Shutters East, and Vietnam War families will meet in Shutters West. The hotel is open for lunch in their restaurant here. If you're interested, also on your tables, there's some information about various different lunch locations close by the hotel. Please be back here in your breakout sessions to begin at 2:30, and enjoy your lunch. Because we're good.